Didn't do it. I think if I did it too, probably like, I think that would be fine. If I like changed it to that. Hello, Harsh. Always saying hi. Hello. Oh my god. How are we all doing? How's everyone's day? So what I am wondering about this is what chapter. Okay, so I started early. We'll see how far I go. I know Kami said that it was like chapter like 938 to 940. I started reading Letting This and I'm about to finish book 2. Isn't it good? It's so good. But also, if you're on book 2, why are you learning what's happening at the end of book 4, my guy? That's the only other thing that I would say about it. Okay, so I'm gonna just like read. What was like the ending portion of it that I should like stop at? Because I know it was like supposed to be like 130 or oh, book 2, not volume 2. You know what? That's me being an idiot. Love that you're on book 2. I'm already starting to kill the game. Doing so well, you know? Oh, okay, here. I will pin the message. Get it set. Oh, dude, I miss Isaac so much. Oh, okay, so it was volume, so I'm not an idiot. Yeah, don't make me seem stupid. Well, thank you for popping in from time to time. It's always fun to have you. I always do appreciate it. I'm gonna check when the chapters need to be done together. You can do up to 27 for now. Okay, I'll do up to 27 for now. And then we'll go from there. Because I'm gonna try and get majority of it done, so that way tomorrow's stream can just be like the little end of it. Yeah, well, it's not me, so we'll finish there. Okay. Other than that, let's get started. Oh, well, thank you so much for coming, that this is your first time. And then on time. Okay. Starting with chapter 920. Caldron's origins. Bayham, the slums. Hooded in a mask underneath it, the hangman, Alger, once again met Admiral Star's Katlia. At the table, the two of them sat across each other, facing each other without saying a word. Finally, Katlia said, "Have you heard the news?" Alger didn't directly answer, as he returned with a question, the one about Gammon Sparrow. Katlia fell silent for a second and nodded. He has returned Admiral Hal into his marionette. Be it Admiral of Blood from before or the present Admiral Hell, they are both pirates who had a higher bounty than her. No matter how confident she was in herself, she didn't believe that the two Sequence 5 elites were weaker than her. You learned of it earlier than I expected. Alger confirmed the authenticity of the news in the tactical manner. Being a member of the Church of Storms, which controlled the large region of the sea, he could directly obtain the latest news from the official channels. Katlia curled her lips and said, "If the future were at sea, I might have to take days or even weeks to receive it, but I've been in Bayham recently." She didn't divulge her intel source. After a pause, Admiral Starr said frankly, "What else do you know about this matter?" Alger shook his head. "I was trying to figure out the exact situation when I saw your signal, so I rushed here to meet you." Katlia nodded slightly. Gammon Sparrow and Admiral Hell did engage in the battle. Ludwell didn't resist, because Gammon Sparrow had bothered both Black Tulip with the man who was addressed as Death Consul. Alger's pupil dilated as he felt an indescribable pressure. Hello. Such a term wasn't something any random demigod could undertake. Furthermore, this wasn't something that the man flaunted himself, but an honorific name that Admiral Hal Ludwell had used. Furthermore, he gave up resistance and was willing to lose his life. With the hangman not saying a word, Calia added in Death Pathway. Death Consul is the name of the sequence 2, of course. Every emperor in Balam Empire was also given this title. Indeed, an angel from the Death Domain. Alger automatically ignored in the later probability. After all, based on the acting method, the position of emperor was definitely held by sequence 2 angel before the Balam Empire fell. And for some reason, who could make Admiral Hell become Garamond Sparrow's marionette without putting up any resistance? They were definitely not something a mere title could accomplish. At this moment, Alger suddenly thought of something that left a deep impression on him. After Vice Admiral Hurricane Calango successfully fled, he was found standing by the side of an artificial lake. His face was rapidly rotted by pieces of flesh falling off, even if his eyeballs had rolled out of his sockets. It was undoubtedly the damage dealt by a potent force from Death Domain, and Alger later confirmed that it was done by Mr. Fool's Blessed. To rapidly cause the death of a pirate admiral without him putting up any resistance, especially one who carried so much powerful sealed artifacts. The assailant's level was obvious. The Church of Storm's spell singer of the god Archbishop's Snake had determined that it was done by a high sequence beyonder from the Death Pathway, and that it was a person he knew. Alger had no doubts about that. He believed that it was done by a sequence 4 or sequence 3 demigod, in other words, a saint. He also felt horrified that Mr. Fool's Blessed was a high sequence beyonder. Now he secretly gulped his saliva with great difficulty, believing that he had underestimated Mr. Fool back then, as well as that Blessed. This person wasn't a saint, but a grounded angel, one that shared the same level as the 3 crowns of the various Orthodox churches. When it came to religion, the 3 crowns represented the various churches, Pope, Pontiff, and Chief Shepherd. A Death Consul is a blessed. Although Mr. Fool is still recovering, the amount of strength he has at his disposal is quite stable. Alger's thoughts churned and his eyes simmered. He was momentarily at a loss for words. Calia sensed his gloom and asked, "You seem to have recalled something." Alger deliberated for 2 seconds before vaguely replying, "Based on what I know, Mr. Fool has an Death Angel amongst his blessed." "That matches," Calia said as though she muttered it to herself. "Then why did the world promise me mythical creatures' blood? That's not from the Death Angel. It's due to having closer ties with one another, making it easier to obtain. Perhaps." Although Alger felt that Admiral Starr's interference wasn't wrong, he habitually gave a non-committal answer. Calia didn't continue on the topic, as she said, "We will start the operation tonight from 7:30 to 8. If you can participate in it, head over there with me." She has finally figured out the situation with the artisan. Alger secretly heaved a sigh of relief and asked in puzzlement, "Why that time?" It wasn't the most suitable period for any covert operation. Once any mistake was made, the official beyonders would quickly detect it and rush over. Calia nudged a heavy glass on her nose and said with a complicated smile, "It's because it's dinner time for them, and they will be having mushrooms for dinner." What's the connection? The experience, Alger realized that he couldn't read the subtext of Admiral Starr's words. East Balam in the lush and humid forest. Klein deliberately avoided the main path and came to an unstable area. He planned on getting Ludwell to take off his silver mask. It wasn't to satisfy his curiosity, but for genuine reason. The silver mask was too striking. If he didn't deal with it, there was no amount of disguise that could direct the attention away from others. The biggest problem for the marionettes is the marionette's identity. The most powerful the marionette, the more famous they were alive. Bringing one along with me has the risk of being exposed. If it wasn't because I didn't have the time to finish off the pirates on the Black Tulip, I would have had the means to keep it under wraps. For example, I could continue letting Ludwell be the captain while I pretended to be a subordinate. To a faceless, that's very simple. Klein sighed as he passed through the forest. There were many mosquitoes around him, but none of them came for him. All of them were circling Admiral Hal Ludwell, trying to suck his blood in his veins. Klein had given his new marionette a green essence ring, which attracted mosquitoes. Fucking course he did. This was because its effects were completely overshadowed by flour. of blood. Wearing the 2 rings was rather meaningless for Winter Enzo. In addition, Klein had confirmed that Ludwell's situation was special. He wasn't too afraid of being bitten by mosquitoes. After walking a distance, oh wait, pause. How long is Azek out of the game for? How long is he not in the book for? Like, is he gone until like the end? Does he come back? I'm just kind of like clocking that he's kind of out of the game for who knows how long. He's on an indefinite hiatus. After the few minutes of contemplation, he decided to finish something else before removing the new marionette's mask. This was because although the process he could confirm the severity of the light and danger beneath the mask. Taking out the corresponding items, Klein quickly set up the ritual and moved the radio transceiver from above the gray fog to the real world. He better be back. He wanted to contact Rhodes. Before he left Colon City, he had paid Miss Messenger £350 for the spirit world coordinates to Caldron City. He had also been warned about the extreme dangers associated with, therefore he planned on obtaining more information from 2 channels in order to prepare for his hunting mission. The two channels involved in order to prepare for his hunting mission. Oh yeah, I will fix the past stream and like all the different ones. The Mr. Azek being prolonged slumber, Klein decided not to hesitate further. He planned on expanding his social circle and not just subordinately and inflexibly stuck to the Evernight goddess. He needed to find powers and balance things out, and the relatively friendly 7 lights of the spirit world were the best choice. With the appearance of the radio transceiver, the surrounding woods suddenly turned gloomy. It was as though the spirit world had overlapped, and the real world. In about 10 seconds, tapping sounds sounded, illusory white paper began, spat out. Exalted great master, your puny, loyal, humble... We keep adding words, Rhodes. Your puny, loyal, humble servant Rhodes is here to answer your summoning. I think possibly a degrading kink. Just possible. There's definitely no danger here. What say you? Seeing the coquettish manner of speech, Klein sighed silently and finally confirmed that he had connected to the magic mirror Rhodes. He had previously been afraid that the white piece of paper would have words, "I want to have a child with you." I would also be afraid of that because, like, that's not, like, it's not unrealistic, you know? Of course, he had divided the level of danger of contacting Rhodes above the great fog, and he obtained an answer that was fine. However, the mother tree of desire, having a precedent of interfering with divinations as well as misinterpretations of the infiltrating St. Samuel Cathedral's Channis Gate. He wasn't too certain. Indeed, Klein nodded in a reserved manner before asking, "What do you know of Caldron City in the spirit world?" Amidst clicking sounds, a piece of illusory white paper exited the radio transceiver in a hesitant manner. "I can't see the city too clearly. I do not know its exact state, but I can confirm that the saint has perished in there before. There were also certain angels, travelers, and spirit world creatures who had once entered and explored it and left it alive in a relatively smooth manner. However, none of them have got much out of it. Also, I know the origins of the city." Without waiting for Klein to press more, illusory white paper spat out amidst clicking sounds. "Its former name was the City of Dead. It was a ground divine kingdom with the ancient goddess, Phoenix ancestor, Grey Grace. Ever since that ancient goddess opened up the underworld, her divine kingdom was moved there. The City of the Dead gradually became the holy grounds of her descendants and believers. Before, Grey Grace was heavily injured by the ancient sun god and had the city uprooted and thrown deep into the spirit world. None of its citizens ever came out again. The name Caldron originates from the Abraham family's angel and a first person who stepped in the language of the dead. It means unknown soul." Interesting. Chapter 21. Politeness first. I'm missing a letter. What letter am I missing? What letter am I missing? This one. Yeah. Okay, but I was also like yip yapping for the beginning of it. I can read these chapters These are also actually kind of longer chapters, so we'll see. When it came to understanding the ancient gods, Klein knew as much as many high sequence beyonders. After all, he had the City of Silver, who continued on from the second epoch to that day behind. The corresponding myths were passed down from angels, had left plenty of influence. Based on what we knew, Phoenix ancestor Grey Grace was a so-called ancient goddess because of the City of Silver's creators. The ancient sun god, who eventually ended up being consumed by the King of Angels, dealt heavy damage to her. Eventually, she persisted towards the end of the second epoch. However, her influence had yet to dissipate to that day. Signs of her existence remained because she was the founder of the underworld. City of Dead, unknown soul, ancient goddess. It sounds very dangerous. Klein looked at the radio transceiver in front of him and fell silent. Tap, tap, tap. Another piece of illusory white paper spat out. Apart from that, I'm unsure of the rest. Great Master, I have a suggestion. Would you like to hear it? Of course. That's a nice question. Klein reined his thoughts and nodded gently. Speak. The clacking of the radio transceiver became increasingly brisker as a new line of text quickly appeared on the illusory white paper. Okay. Regarding Calderon City, you can ask Red Light Arumoria. I still have to ask Red Light at the end. Klein nodded silently and switched to asking, is there any danger if I were to remove Admiral Hal Ludwell's mask? No, a deceiver answered appeared before Klein's eyes. That's good, he thought and said. Let's end it here for today. Great Master, wise Master, in another 1 to 2 minutes, a gaze will be cast here. Your loyal and humble servant of Rhodes will await the next summoning. Goodbye. The radio transceiver began tapping without any hesitation. Another 1 to 2 minutes. Why didn't you say so earlier? Klein was alarmed as though he was seeing countdown timer on a time bomb. He hurriedly used the altar and material he had yet cleared to set up a sacrificial ritual. When he threw up the radio transceiver above the gray fog, after doing all of this and confirming that there weren't any abnormalities around him, Klein made Ludwell walk to the side and not face him directly as he took off the silver mask. Gloomy pale white light spewed out. But it wasn't as exaggerated the battle between Klein and Ludwell. It only enveloped a small region, that extinguishing candle. Meanwhile, as the radio transceiver had been sent above the gray fog, the gloomy cold feeling that had disappeared in the nearby forest appeared again. Furthermore, it had an indescribable sense of horror that struck at the heart. This reminds Klein of a cemetery and the legendary underworld. After waiting a few seconds, seeing that there weren't any additional abnormal developments, it made his other marionette winner, Enzo, to circle to Ludwell's front and carefully observe the face that had been masked for extended periods of time. The face lacked flesh, the skin clung tightly to the bones without any colors. It was translucent as crystal. Beneath the crystal, transparent and iridescent shadows quickly flowed out, at times fusing with the skull, and at other times they shrank in gaps, surfacing on his teeth. Compared to the first one, in 2 months of his transmigration, Klein would have been shocked by Admiral Hell's appearance, but now, having already seen all kinds of old rampagers and mutated bodies, he wasn't shocked by such looks. After another round of research, Klein completely figured out Ludwell's condition. All of this stemmed from the unique traits of him being a gatekeeper. At Sequence 5, after becoming a gatekeeper, Beyonders could use their bodies as cages and belonged exclusively to the underworld, allowing them to contain a certain number of souls decreased in natural spirits. As well, they obtained all kind of unique powers and powerful helpers. There was no need to bring a huge undead army around in an eye-catching manner. This was the origin of many folktales. Another purpose of the gatekeeper was an ancient role to guard the underworld in their bodies, preventing the souls containing within from escaping, and to use them, and similarly had the symbol of a pair of double illusory doors. And after ancient death, Phoenix ancestor Grey Grace created the underworld. It was bestowed a small amount of death pathway authority to all gatekeepers. This made Beyonders of his sequence receive an enhancement in strength. The reason why Ludwell kept wearing the mask was because he had contained the powerful underworld creature in him. On the other hand, the creature could be used by him, and on the other hand, it was eroding his body, turning him into a half-human, half-dead existence. At the same time, ultimately, this creature was innately connected to the underworld. It was attempting to open the door in return. This was the combination of Gatekeeper's own powers and authorities, and with the augmentation from the Death's Ring, it allowed Admiral Hal Ludwell to enlarge the door to the underworld, allowing him to steer the Black Tulip directly inside, half-human and half-dead form. No wonder Ludwell dares to enter the underworld. A real living person probably can't survive a second inside. Yes, the underworld creature gives his body some traits of dead souls, allowing him to extract the spirit bodies of others remotely. He suffered from that back then. Klein thought in enlightenment as he made Ludwell wear the silver mask again. The mask's purpose was to place the soul. It allowed the underworld creature in Ludwell's body to be relatively calm state most of the time. After resolving in puzzlement, Klein cast his gaze back to the altar. He wanted to attempt to contact one of the spirit world's 7 lights. In this aspect, there were special secret deed rituals and the corresponding spirit channel rituals he could choose from. After some consideration, Klein chose the latter. This was because a secret deed ritual required him to open up his mind and spirit, allowing the targeted existence to make contact and thus obtain certain knowledge, strength, help, and spiritual experiences. This also meant that the body's thoughts and secrets were open to that existence. And through the spirit channel ritual, there were 2 types: direct communication and praying for soulful, as the spirit world's 7 lights were extremely lawfully existence. Klein couldn't guarantee a response based on the ritual's request. Therefore, though he wished to communicate remotely via spirit channeling, he had to make preparations for the soulfall to show its sincerity. Lighting 3 candles and dipping liquid like mint essential oil, Klein specially took out a paper figurine and placed it on the altar in the vessel for the soulfall. If there weren't anything similar to the suffocating targets who would soulfall into him, just like how Donitz had requested Vice Admiral Iceberg Edwina's soulfall back then. Bro, how many times am I going to say soulfall in this? I'm going to guess at least 6 more. There was also 2 scenarios. First, the possessed body would lose all their senses, and they would have the corresponding existence control a certain part of their body, so as to facilitate providing a question and answer in simple example. There was one using the mouth to speak, while the other was controlling the hand to write. Klein quickly completed the first part of the ritual before he took a step back, opening his mouth and chanted in ancient Hermes. I summon in my name. I pray to communicate with the inextinguishable light of the spirit world, the embodiment of infinite knowledge, and the red who wields authority and will. Hi, Louvre. The biggest difference between the spirit channeling ritual and the ordinary ones was that it couldn't be directed to deities, be it the Evernight goddess or the god of knowledge and wisdom. Their honorific names couldn't appear in the ritual, or else it would be bound to fail. From the mysticism angle, this meant that the spirit world's 7 lights didn't serve any deities, as the worlds fascinated the communication with natural spirits were said. Klein saw the 3 flames burgeoning as the light splattered around, connecting together as though the light was opening. This area around the altar suddenly turned silent, and dark pairs of unknowing. Is that better? Suddenly turned silent, and dark pairs of unknowing eyes looked over from different areas. The cold, gloomy air blew past. Apart from the 3 candles, all the items on the altar floated in midair. Amongst them, the paper figurine staggered, straightened. The surface was stained with thick, clean red, and didn't look bloody at all. Greetings. As Klein recalled the description of the spirit world's 7 lights from some mysticism books, he spoke and followed the correct way of interacting that he had concluded. He acted like he was facing a teacher. The bright red paper figurine's head moved slowly as it let out an illusory but stern voice. Hello there. Hello there, quite polite. Indeed, spirit channeling became a soulfall, thankfully. I made preparations. Various thoughts flashed in Klein's mind as he earnestly and politely asked, Your Excellency, or Moria, I have a question I would like to ask you. You can just call me Ora Moria. Please go ahead. That's not the easy part of your name, babe. Please go ahead and ask. The paper figurine floating in mid-air seemed to be competing with Klein about who was more polite. Is that I wish to get information on Caldron City. Klein didn't change his attitude. After all, the foodaholic empire, there was a proverb, nobody will find fault in extra courtesy. The bright red, nearly transparent paper figurine pondered for 2 seconds and said, Can I know your purpose? Klein didn't conceal his purpose. He frankly said, to hunt a spirit world plunderer. The paper figurine's head moved slightly. That's indeed something that can only be found in Caldron City with ease. Everywhere the spirit world plunderer, like are like a drop of water in the ocean. They are very hard to distinguish, and even I will occasionally discover them. I'm unable to lock on to them for long periods of times. A number of them are active in the core region of Caldron City. A few are scattered in the periphery. As long as you don't attempt to go too deep inside, it's actually not too dangerous. Unfortunately, due to the special reasons, us seven lights are prohibited from entering. Otherwise, we would still provide you with some actual help. That's formally to divine a kingdom of ancient goddess Grey Grace. Klein's heart settled down as he asked, a form of confirming the answers. The bright red paper figurine said yes, the ancient death wished to revive herself using the city of dead, but she failed completely. The authority is taken by Balaam's death. But she failed completely. The authority was taken by Balaam's death. However, this also makes Caldron City more dangerous because the setup left by the ancient goddess underwent an abnormality after the failure. As for what it has turned into, I'm not too sure. Is that so? Klein nodded indiscernibly. He raised a few questions about the other matters and received a rather satisfactory answer. Bayham, outside a house near the harbor. Alger and Cattleya were patiently waiting for people inside to finish their dinner. Mushrooms and fish, mushrooms and fish, mushrooms and fish. I like mushrooms and fish. It was supposed to be emotes only, but like nobody's really doing that. That was just so I could like lock in and actually read the book. This is the first thing I've ate in like 3 days. And I've had like a third, half of it, and I'm like already full. Chapter 222, Mushrooms and Fish. Looking at the light that emanated out of the oriel window and hooded the mast, Alger was just about to ask about the details of the operation when he suddenly saw the shadow grow out of the rich darkness. It materialized in a lanky, pale, sticky young man. Bloodless Heath Doyle. Alger quickly recognized the man to be his second mate of the future. Heath didn't look at him, and he directly said to Cattleya, Captain. Yeah. They didn't notice anything and turned those mushrooms into cream mushroom soup. Oh my god, that sounds so good right now. I finally have my appetite bite, and that sounds delicious. They plan on using preparation pan-fried fish as tonight's main course. Excellent. Cattleya removed her heavy glasses and put her nose and used her eyes, which a mysterious purple hue, to look through the neighboring house dining hall across the walls. Fucking speak, dude. Heath Doyle didn't speak further as his body instantly darkened and returned to the shadows. It was unknown where he had slunk to after hearing the conversation and combining it with what Ma'am Hermit had previously mentioned. Alger had a rough idea of the core elements of tonight's operation. Mushrooms. Poisonous mushrooms. Although he didn't know the method of Admiral Stars was using to cause the spirit intuition of beyonders inside the infective and not be able to distinguish normal mushrooms from poisonous mushrooms, Alger believed that there was nothing impossible in mysticism. He hesitantly said, "Will this cause artisan Kelf's death?" Unaffiliated artisan were rather rare, so Alger didn't wish to lose such a friend. If there's still room for turning things around to him, the best case was to imprison a fellow and make him the exclusive artisan we both, him and the hermit. No, Cattleya calmly shook her head and explained, "Be it from the information you gave from the observation of the crew, there's one point to take note of. Clelf doesn't like fish, and he even hates it. This might have to do with him getting a fishbone stuck in his throat when he was young, and it was because the matter of Cattleya's ultimately chose the mushroom strategy that could effectively reduce the enemy's effective strength, while allowing their side to minimize any risk. The dark environment bred mushrooms and devoured flesh and body were first to be eliminated by Admiral Stars because they couldn't let Beyonders with sharp spiritual perception sense anything amiss. This was akin to facing something poisonous. In addition, Beyonders who believed in the primordial moon had a rather deep understanding of herbs, plants, and fruits, relying on visual observations that were likely able to identify mushrooms in poised danger. To trick them, the only way was for food to be harmless itself. Only through its contact with something else did a mutation occur. Based on this, the mushrooms previously created by Frank were perfect. If the two conditions of the fish weren't met, the mushrooms were ordinarily mushrooms. They could neither poison a person to death or cause diarrhea. It would be digested bit by bit and broken down into the different components before being expelled by the body. At this point, any more fish in water was useless. For this, Catley especially got Frank to temporarily abandon his experience and had obtained a batch of mushrooms. She also promised to hunt an Aurora Order Rose Bishop for him hates fish, Alger whispered, feeling like he couldn't keep up with the hermit's thought process. He had clearly asked the poisonous mushrooms could cause Artisan Clough's death, but the answer had received was the artisan wouldn't die. He didn't like fish and even hated it. Is there something connection between the two? Alger questioned it puzzled him. But he didn't say it out loud. He maintained a silence and planned to observe more and take notes. After a while, there were screams from inside the house. The call is coming from inside the house. Following the pangs of painful grunts and vomiting. Begin. Catley issued an order in abnormally succinct manner. Her figure instantly turned transparent, turning into a sculpture formed by countless stars. The sculpture shattered instantly as bright stars surged towards the house door and drilled through the gaps. As the stars gathered inside, Catley's figure materialized. Oh, dude, that's a fucking cool power. Why am I just learning about this now? Then she heard howling winds and sounds of coalition. The door frame shook before the door opened. Wearing a hood and mask, Alger entered the targeted building, not much slower than Admiral Starr. She swept her gaze and quickly took out the saturation of the dining hall. Artisan Clough was retreating from his table and looked out of horror. On the ground, there were two men and women who were constantly vomiting mushrooms. At their chests, their clothes had ripped apart, and one mushroom after another sprouted. Upon sensing someone entering, the subconsciously looked up, revealing a bunch of white spores on their face. Under his mask, Alger's face involuntarily twitched, although he was expecting the knowledge, and with him being a beyonder who had his fair share of experiences seeing horrible scenes, such a scene still left a striking visual mental impact on him. Catley had expected it, but she never expected such a harrowing sight. After a moment of surprise, she held her right hand in her mouth and blew a whistle. Illusory ropes emerged from the ground and coiled around the three primordial moon believers like snakes. Is there a way to stop this? Catley said, a shadow in the corner. After a moment of silence, Heath Doyle's voice sounded. Frank said that he hadn't obtained a way to... Of course he hasn't. Frank said that he hasn't obtained a way to stop it in its experiments. The only way is cremation. Cremation. Catley's brows quivered immediately. She took out a powder from her pocket and threw it out at them. The powder seemed to have a life of its own, and they accurately landed on the three primitive believers and the various mushrooms. Silently, they burst into scarlet flames and silently burned wherever they touched. Okay. Artisan Clough was already dumbstruck from witnessing the mutations. When someone intruded, he had thought of resisting using a magical item, but he quickly recognized the intruder to be Admiral Starr's Calia. Hence, he wisely gave up and stood in a spot waiting. He knew that this was a significant value. No matter where he went, it was not someone who would immediately be killed. Furthermore, Admiral Starr's never had any infamy to her name. Worst comes to worst, I'll just have to join the Star Pirates. Besides, the pirate admiral seems to be more beautiful than the bounty notice. She exudes a completely different air. Clough tugged at his wolf fang necklace and forced a smile, waiting to intruder to mention her purpose. Catley glanced at him, seriously observed his appearance. All she could do was confirm that he was a classic example of someone from Intis, but she failed to find a similarity between Queen Mystic. The pirate admiral deliberately liberated and said, I had been introduced by my friends hoping to get you to create hoping to create a mystical item, but I later discovered that you were with some primordial moon believers. The three of them aren't too strong and couldn't restrain you at all. Why do you still remain here? In the operation, Catley's main hypothetical enemy, and actually the artisan himself, this is because she could neither kill him nor control him. Furthermore, he still had many well-matched mystical items, making him a powerful enemy. Yet, things developed smoothly on her surprise. Clough said with a surprise, they had strong ones in Bayham in the beginning, using particular floral fragrances and powders. They infected me with strange ailments, making me increasingly weaker. Catley had casually sized him up and said, you've already recovered, so why aren't you taking this opportunity to escape. Alger stood up by the side silently. He didn't say a word, afraid that his voice might betray him. Artisan Clove chuckled and said, "While I was under their control, they told me as long as I believed in the primordial moon, I could use certain rituals to treat my chronic illness. I couldn't resist the temptation and tried it, and it really succeeded. I found the feeling to be a man again." Having said that, he came to an abrupt halt, realizing that he had said too much, exposing his secret illness. This is him letting himself go too far, but when it comes to women, thus slowly losing his ability in bed. Alger chuckled inwardly. Clove looked up and glanced at him, seeing that no one was mocking him. He coughed slightly and continued, "It wasn't something that relied on medicine. I really recovered my young viral state later. I had 2 dreams of the moon that was bloody and very enticing. I believed that I had already become a believer of the primordial moon. Therefore, I didn't dare escape." Callie and Alger silently exchanged gazes, simultaneously passing the death sentence on him. As long as someone truly believes in an evil god, devil, or some other secret existence, unless they are willing to continue in the faith and slowly become crazier, there was no regret. Even if they were protected by official Beyonder factions and didn't suffer any problems for prolonged periods, they might end up strangling themselves in their sleep years later. This is nearly unsalvageable unless they earned the right to receive the blessing of the grounded angel, like a pope or a major church, or if they accepted being isolated by certain sealed artifacts and living underground forever. Of course, under such situations, there were also many who did nothing and managed to live a ripe old age before dying of natural death. However, they were mostly ordinary people, targets that the evil gods, devils, and hidden existence easily ignored. As for Clelf, he was a very useful artisan. Catlia didn't mention the primordial moon believers again to her. It was as big as a problem whether the artisan believer of the ancient god, as long as it could be communicated with the reach and deal for the cooperation and not go crazy from time to time. The other matters were something the pirate needed to be worried about. She switched topic and said, "What mystical item do you have now? I'll choose a few and leave with you if you rest." Towards such a development, Artisan Clove wasn't too surprised. He was a pirate, not a policewoman. Doing a heist in passing was extremely normal. For her to leave him with some item was something he should earnestly thank her for. In fact, with this level of items, it was possible for him to successfully escape if he went all out, but he lacked the courage. Alright. Clove took out a piece of grayish-white glasses from his breast pocket. Gargoyle glasses. As long as sight lines are met, it can cause the other party to turn numb all over, though they're being petrified. There are 2 negative effects. First, if one wears it and looks into a mirror, one will turn numb as well. Second, one's body will turn heavy, making one agile. It's the item I reserved, so it's already been made. Looking at the artisan, Alger couldn't help but narrow his eyes. There are 2 Fs. Yeah. Clove didn't notice anything in Alger's eyes. He pointed at the one cremated primordial moon believer and said, "That cane was taken from me. It's called World of the Sea. I can release lightning at a target. Waving it and striking it will cause it to augment in the wind blades. Apart from that, it can also create large wind spheres and corrosive rainwater. It can also allow the wielder to not be afraid of deep sea pressure. They can freely extract oxygen from the water at the same time. It can also be used to wand to provide a flight. There are 3 negative side effects. First, it enjoys singing every 6 hours. Blow my fucking head off. It has to belt out a song. The resulting effects don't discriminate between friend or foe. Due to the different choices in song and style, it can make one's mind go adrift and have one's mind and soul shocked, and the other times can cause it to be irresistible and be in a state of the lowered reason. Of course, even without waiting 6 hours, it will also be very willing to sing if you so desire. Actually, so fucking good. Second, you can probably tell that it's equipped with a living characteristic. Furthermore, it's one that is rather testy. It enjoys tripping, beating, and pulling the wielder downstairs when they aren't paying attention. Fun fact, I would still rather choose that than the singing wand. Third, it will cause the wielder to easily be struck by lightning. Therefore, on stormy days, either don't go out or don't bring it along. Okay, this is a sealed artifact that was made by Garamond Sparrow's Ocean Songster Beyond a character. Oh. Garrett Sparrow's ocean song to beyond characteristic. If you were to know that you had already made it and had allowed the primordial moon believers to take it away, you will definitely be sold to someone who is in need of you. In the form beyond a characteristic, Alger looked towards the dining table and saw the black, silver inlaid cane. From what he knew, regardless of whether the other negative effects were severe, mystical items and living characteristics were considered sealed artifacts. This was because there was an unpredictable danger associated with them. Catlia and her companion not telling him that he was done, Kelf only could continue talking about mystical items with a glum face. This short knife is called Blade of Poison. The effects are obvious. There's no need for me to give additional information, right? Every time it deals damage, it will add on a random poison. As for what it is, it's all luck. Its negative effects aren't too serious. It will only cause medical treatments to fail and the feeling of being drunk to accumulate within the wielder. It's not that bad. Clove continued introducing a few mystical items and finally heard Catly say, "Excellent. The rest are yours." She still left me there. Not only did Clove not bear grudge, he felt deep down as a nice person Admiral Stars was. It was as though he had suffered some psychological ailment. Callie then turned to look at the hangman. "You pick first." She knew that the world Garrett Sparrow had commissioned the mystical item to be made of the artisan. Therefore, the hangman had to first select the crazy adventurer's item first. Alder nodded and took the world of the sea of the gargoyle glasses. Then he indicated that the rest were spoils of war. Catlia thought for a moment and said, "Pick another one. The rest will be mine." She wasn't too interested in remaining mystical items because she had two rather powerful items that suited her. She had obtained the Scales of Luck that Judge Barton later, thus covering all of her bases. Under such a situation, the stacking of negative effects was something to be considered unless it was something extremely special. It wasn't something she would take a second look at or choose to exchange. Of course, as a pirate admiral, she never found mystical items too excessive. After all, she had a hand over some of the items of the Moses Ascetic order, and leave the rest to reward her crew. Alger fell silent for a moment, staring from what items beyond her powers he had. He chose from the Blade of Poison. Following that, Catley instructed Bloodless Heath Doyle to move the mystical items that Kelf had placed on the ground, and the remnant items left by the primordial moon believers out of the room. Then she looked at the artisan with her dark purple hue eyes. "Why do the primordial moon believers want to control you?" Kelf's eyes flickered. "Isn't that simple and obvious? To get me to make mystical items for them." Just as he said that, his heart skipped a beat, and the result of the purple eyes were cold locking onto him. He had hurriedly added, "They also seem to have some plan that needed the help of an artisan. As for what it is, I have no idea because it hasn't started." Catley retracted her gaze, seemingly in thought, exchanging the silent look with the hangman. They nodded simultaneously. They decided not to take away the artisan today and to leave him there to monitor the subsequent developments. In other words, they wanted to figure out the primordial moon believers' plan on monitoring him. Actually, for the hermit and the hangman, whatever the primordial moon believers were plotting wasn't something they cared about. They just each had matters they were concerned about. The former used to communicate with Queen Mystic to provide her reference materials for strategies in supernatural world. The latter could use the matter to earn contribution points from the church. Therefore, they had instantly come to the tactical agreement to investigate deeper. Of course, Alger always believed in this principle, and more information he wielded, the more benefit he could obtain from various matters. After a brief silence, Catlia added to the artisan Kelf in the same tone. "Since you're already a primordial moon believer, taking you with me provides me with no benefit." Kelf nodded immediately, agreeing with what she said. Catlia paused for a moment before she said, "However, I wish to establish a long-term working relationship with you. Therefore, I need a few drops of your blood. This will aid me in finding you at any time." Kelf wore a miserable look as his lips quivered, but he was unable to object to it. He suddenly exhaled and said, "Okay." With that said, he picked up the paper cutter beside him and sliced his forearm, letting a few drops of blood drip out. Catley immediately raised her right arm and gently flicked her wrist, causing the few drops of blood to float and fly away towards her. After observing the blood in her palm, the pirate admiral suddenly asked, "What's your last name?" "June," Clove replied instinctively. Catley didn't say a word. She turned around and walked out the door. Alger followed closely behind. The room quickly turned silent as Clove sat on the sofa bed and sat there motionless for quite a while, as though he was in a deep thought over the encounter. Being unable to extract himself from it. 10 minutes later, he suddenly stood up and took out the human skull-shaped figurine from his inside pocket. The figurine was brass-colored, and its face was empty. Blood slowly spewed out from it and remained on the surface. Clelf hurriedly wiped his figurine's face with a handkerchief. Before heaving a sigh of relief, he curled the corners of his lips and silently muttered, "Thankfully I have this fake puppet. Let's see how you can find me with those drops of blood. Don't even think of cursing me." In a poverty-stricken district in Bayham on the street without any street lamps, the masked and hooded Alger looked at the hermit beside him with a deep voice and said, "After Clelf escaped from the Church of Steam, he has been living safe and sound to this day. This means that he's not a fool for him to go easily give you his blood in such a relaxed manner without putting up any resistant means that make it mean to avoid your tracking. Besides, he didn't mention any explanation of how the primordial moon believers found him. Logically speaking, the believers definitely wouldn't ask him for the origins of the werewolf beyond a characteristic, but Clelf hadn't mentioned Alger at all. As Catlia took out the paper of the heavy glasses and wore it, she said with a change in tone, "It isn't used for tricking." Alger nodded and thought before bidding her farewell, turning to the dark alley. He made several detours and found the chance to remove his disguise before leaving Bayham. After he returned to the Resistance Pirate Harbor, he boarded the Blue Avenger. His sailors had pretty much spent most of their energy and money over the past few days, so was the moment they were all on the ship waiting to set off for the sea again. Upon seeing him return, one of the sailors stood immediately and asked with a smile, "Captain, have you had dinner?" "Not yet. Make something simple for me?" For the operations, Alger hadn't had the chance to fill his stomach. The sailor, who also did the cooking on the side, immediately replied, "All right, we've got some fresh mushrooms." "Nope. Absolutely fucking not." "Actually, you know what you can do with those mushrooms? Burn them. In the forest today, how about we pan fry it with some butter?" Alger's face twitched as he shook his head in a normal expression. "Searing a steak would do. Medium rare. Medium done." East Balham by the periphery of the forest. With his two marionettes, Klein wasn't in a rush to leave. He entered the city and planned on getting some dyes to discuss Admiral Hal Ludwell's mask, and before that he had other things to do. It was to seek out helper for the exploration of the periphery of the Cauldron. Klein was never a lone wolf, and he was even more so chased when in the face of danger. Therefore, unless he had no options, he would always invite powerhouses to provide him with help by sharing the coordinates and paying the corresponding price. He wasn't one to rashly enter. To him, being able to obtain the desired ingredients while alive was most important. If it wasn't because I know it's impossible, I'd even wish to wait 1 or 2 weeks before I carry a baby or push a pram to head for Cauldron. Klein sighed silently as he took out the adventurer's harmonica and blew into it. Silently, Renette Tinker, with her 4 heads and hands, walked out of the void. Klein deliberately over his word and said, "I plan on exploring Cauldron City soon." "Well, I've already obtained its coordinates and its spirit world. I'm wondering if I can hire you for help. What would be the price?" The 4 heads in Renette Tinker's hands spoke one after another. "Won't do. I can't enter." Ooh, okay. Little bit of lore, little lore drop. Loving it. Bro, it's a long ass fucking title. Like a really long ass title. I mean, like, pop off though, you know? Also, we're not doing buffer time. These are like longer chapters, but I think they're starting to get smaller again. Okay, can't enter. The 7 lights can't enter for some special reason. Harsh. Silence. It's emote only today. Fucking rude. Also, hi Stan. Can't enter. The 7 lights can't enter for some special reason. It's a restriction Cauldron City has on the higher level creatures of the spirit world. However, how does Miss Messenger know this limitation? Has she been there before? If this was the case, I didn't even need to ask Red Light or the magic mirror. Perhaps her spiritual intuition told her that. As our mind whirled, Klein slowly and silently exhaled. He then took out a gold coin and handed it to Renette Tinker. I understand, thank you for the information. After one of Miss Messenger's head bit on the gold coin and retreated into the spirit world, Klein allowed his thoughts to roam as he considered. Hello. Hello, hello, hello. Is there a rumor going around that I died? Haven't, but, you know. Not this stream. I have in the past, but not this stream. He then took out a gold coin and handed it to Renette Tinker. I understand, thank you for the information. After Miss Messenger had been on the gold coin, Klein allowed his thoughts to roam as he considered how he could find other helpers. Mr. Azek has entered a state of slumber. Oh, don't remind me. He just had such a cool moment. We just got such a cool Azek moment, and now he's gone. Sorry, Alma. So sorry. It's unknown when he will wake up. There's no way to wait for him. Will Septon is about to be born, but is only a baby. He is still in the still at a Nadir. Nadir? Nadir? I know I've seen the word, I just can't say it right now. And even if Ma'am Hermit has the way to temporarily restore his powers while he is weak, it's impossible for him to do something as trivial as being my bodyguard. Besides, once he leaves Backland or showcases his corresponding level, there's a very high chance that he might once again be locked on by Angel of Fate Aurora Boreas. Oh, bye, have so much fun. Get the help of a demigod from the Life School of Thought. This snake of fate, such as the Council of Ricardo, that will be difficult. The Life School of Thought is suffering an internal divide. The counselors have too many things to do. Besides, they're running all over the world with a die of probability to leave traces to divert the Angel of Fate's attention. Queen Mystic Bernadette, I'm not too familiar with her. Besides, the Fool has demigods and angels under him. The Blessed, like Gammon Sparrow, can always find other help. Even if I calm that it's a cooperative effort, I will also expose quite significant problems. On the surface, the Fool has angels and demigods under him, but the actual situation is that at the angel and demigod side is the Fool who's just photobombing them. The chief from the City of Silver, this is indeed something that could be used as a price when he makes a request, but the problem is that he's unable to leave the forsaken land of the gods. I think I should leave this opportunity for the Bizarro Bane. Those geezers of the Sanguine, there's no suitable reason, and it's very easy for me to expose to Lilith, who knows who the dead ancient goddess, who hasn't truly perished, is. If she actually is the primordial moon in disguise, I can't forget about resurrection. Klein thought of one candidate after another, but one by one he struck them off the list. Finally, he couldn't help but sigh. When in need, friends are always in short supply. He couldn't help but think of setting up a ritual to attempt to pray to the Evernight of the Crimson for strength to seek the blessing of the goddess, hoping that she could directly bestow him the I know who he can call. He called Donaldson Anderson, and we can get the trio back. We can get the gang back together. For strength to seek the blessing of the gods, hoping that she could directly bestow him with the true soul-bodied power of the spirit body plunderer, or have some archbishop, high-ranking deacon, or secret ascetic to provide him with help. Unfortunately, he could do was muse over the idea without actually carrying it out. Although Klein was rather accepting of the Evernight goddess and wasn't against the identity of being an Evernight blessed, he still felt extremely wary. He didn't wish to rely on the deity's bestowment for everything. Besides, he suspected that a similar ritual would have the effects. This was because at the present level of strength, he had no right to raise conditions in a sequence 0. If the deity was willing to give them, she would naturally give it to him, and if she didn't pray, was useless. I have the shamelessness. If I had the shamelessness of old Neil, I might really try it. Back then, the goddess was willing to respond to his debt payment and resolve in constipation. She didn't dote on her believers pretty well. Of course, there must be a certain side effect. Klein recalled the past as he sighed. He decided to change his train of thought. Oh my god, I'm getting teary-eyed right now. Since he couldn't get help from his friends, he considered making use of his enemies. Perhaps I can bring the Black Emperor card, Tyrant card, or the radio transceiver. I could wait at the entrance of Caldron City. As long as King of the Five Seas Nas, high sequence beyonders of the Church of Storms, our leaders in the Rose School of Thought like Sua, and the other demigods and angels rushed over, I will immediately enter the city of the dead. No, that's too explicit. King of the Five Seas Nas and the high sequence beyonders of the Church of Storms are highly unlikely to follow me into the Caldron city. Instead, they'll stand outside and wait for me to come out. Dude, literally, Klein has so many enemies. Abomination Sua might chase after me, but he is an angel. He would be impeded by anything in the periphery of the Caldron city. I'll only be inviting trouble to myself. After repeated thought, Klein finally gave up on the idea and created chaos for his benefit. He believed that the difficulty to replicate the same situation outside of Bayham City from back then. It was even more so when he wasn't in a high sequence beyond it. The person who treads the edge of the abyss would fall into this sooner or later. Who else can provide me with help? Klein gaze swept past the two marionettes as friends after friends flashed in his mind, including members of the Tarot Club. Suddenly he recalled something. Miss Sharon once told me that the mummy is one of the keys to her advancement ritual, and it's very important to her. This also means that she's about to become a demigod, sequence 4 puppet of the Marauder pathway. If she succeeds, I can get her help. We have Miss Sharon! We have had a good partnership. Thankfully, I choose to help her. Otherwise, I wouldn't have any hope today. As Klein relayed in his poignancy, he took out a paper and fountain pen. Placing his paper on Enzo's back, he scribbled, "It's been a while since we last met. I wonder how you've been recently." Klein, why are you writing to her like it's you know? As he wrote, Klein suddenly stopped. He felt opening was way too often. That's what I'm saying. Like, Klein, why are we, like, opening with, "Hey, long time no chat, girly." Bro, cut to the chase. That is not you and Sharon's relationship. Miss Sharon is a person who restrains herself. When she writes letters, she goes straight to the point without saying anything unnecessary. Thank you. I have to consider her personality and be more frank. Yeah. Klein thought for a few seconds, before rashly... No, did I say puppet of the Marauder pathway? Okay, just fucking add it. Seconds before previous slip of paper, shaking it, he made it become engulfed in scarlet flames. After a few seconds of deliberation, Klein wrote on a new slip of paper. I've already acquired the spirit world coordinates of the Caldron city. If you've ever really become a demigod, I wish to cooperate again and receive some help. If not, there's no need to force it. I can still find other friends. Bro, you clearly can't. Sherlock Moriarty. After folding the slip of paper and addressing it to Ma'am Miriam, Klein took out the adventurer's harmonica again and blew it. Renette Tinker, in her dark and complicated dress, walked out the void as though she had never left the vicinity, appearing right in front of him. Klein handed her the letter, folded the slip of the gold coin, and seriously exhorting, "Send it to Backlund, Hillston, 126 Guard Street. Throw it directly into the mailbox." "All right," one of Renette Tinker's heads said, while another head bit on the letter and the gold coin. Upon seeing this, Klein pressed, somewhat worried. "You haven't lost the previous map, right? Do you know which borough Hillston Borough is? Do you know where Guard Street is?" The other three heads which Renette Tinker held replied, "No, I know. It's very easy to find." Klein immediately heaved a sigh of relief as he politely sent Miss Messenger. Hurd temporarily threw the matter of Caldron City into the back of his mind and began disguising his marionette Ludwell. The next morning, a man with brownish skin, light curly hair, was dressed in a formal Lowen attire and the silk top half, entered the Tunnix city that bordered the forest with his two servants. This was a city that mainly produced timber, rubber, and special products from the forest. There was talk in the town at a few hair-grown research centers, and the complementing factories were established here. Having disguised himself as a local wealthy man, Klein quickly found a hotel to stay in, sitting on the reclining chair made of rattan. He observed his handiwork once again. Winter Enzo's skin was not only bronze, but it was now almost completely black. Together with his thin, soft hair, bushy brows, and dark shadow facial outline, matched his Ballum-styled baggy creased pants and a black and white top hat. He looked like a typical example of the local servant that hailed from the particular plantation manor. Admiral Hell Ludwell's rather resplendent clothes had become the same style as Enzo. He exposed his skin in clear burn marks, and his silver mask was now dyed with a uniform iron-black color. This was made to look as though he had been disfigured due to the fire accident, and that was wearing a mask to hide his face, lest he scared any passers-by. After having his lunch, which was served to his room, Klein heard stacks of illusory prayers. Mail, Mr. Hangman, is also possible its Emlyn and little son. The transaction of the Sequence 5 Beyonder characteristics of the vampire pathway is about to begin. Klein just about to head to the bathroom to take 4 steps counterclockwise and head above the gray fog. This was spiritual perception was triggered. He heard activity in the spirit vision and saw a headless Renette Tinker appear out of the spirit world, which overlapped with the real world and a letter in her head's mouth. Miss Sharon has replied. Klein first thanked her before receiving the letter and tearing it open to read. Sorry, I will likely still need another 1 to 2 months in preparation. If you still need my help by then, I'll be fine with it. Sharon. 1 to 2 months. It's not like I can't wait. It's not like I've digested my marionette potion yet. Klein nodded indecorously, got a pen and some paper, and replied simply, Take your own time. There's no rush. My matter isn't urgent. I can wait. Sherlock Moriarty. After handling the letter and the gold coin to Renette Tinker and getting her to send it to Backland Hillston 126 Grande Street, Klein suddenly thought of a problem. During wars, scouting is necessary. How can we be rash and so careless about exploring a dangerous place like Caldron City? When Miss Sharon advances, I can head there to do some scouting and gather some intelligence without the need to take risks. For example, I can figure out exactly what restrictions there are, what kind of anomalies will happen towards Death's domain powers, or I can figure out whether I'm only able to enter by a fixed entrance, or if there's any way of returning above the gray fog inside. After confirming all of this, I can formulate a plan and make preparations. Of course, before scouting, divination is necessary. Klein soon made up his mind and walked into the attached bathroom. Oh my god, go back. There it is. Oh my god, I'm not almost done, but I'm getting close. You know? We're going, we're moving. I'm getting there. Okay, above the endless gray white fog, the magnificent ancient hall. Klein didn't rush to do divination. He answered the hangman Eldred's sacrificial ritual and got the cane made from the ocean songster beyond a characteristic and to appear in front of him. Word of the Sea, the name the translated to Word of the Sea, this name, which translated to Chinese does bring back memories. I'll just leave it at that. It's basically a weaker version of the Sea God Scepter. It doesn't have demigod level powers like lightning storm or tsunami either. There are a number of negative effects. As Klein recalled the hangman's description, he stroked the silver inlaid black cane. Perhaps the mysterious base above the gray fog had naturally suppressed it, causing the Beyonder cane to not express its living characteristics. It silently lay there like it was the most common and ordinary piece of wood. Klein nodded silently and muttered silently to himself. Mystical items with living characteristics are really rather troublesome, but from a different angle. It means that they can be communicated with. The die probability back then was quite a nasty fellow, but didn't it also become obedient after getting schooled? Besides, I can always have my servants hold it most of the time. Yes, Winter Enzo will be the most suitable, though he already has 0 passive luck. He is accumulating luck constantly and make preparations for the critical moment. Releasing a little bit of it wouldn't affect anything. This will be a way of tripped, thrown, and beaten. It would be able to smoothly avoid it and not garner the attention of others. On careful thought, the cane pranks are completely useless. If we were to meet other marionettes, spirit world plunderers, or bizarro banes, and lose my initiative and end up being initially controlled, my thoughts and actions would turn sluggish. I would be quite difficult to extract myself from the state of myself. At this moment, if an uncontrollable cane were suddenly hit me or trip me to the ground, wouldn't it be successfully escaping from my predicament? If the mystical item's negative effects are used well, they can be quite a boon. Of course, in normal combat such as pranks can bring about unnecessary dangers. How it should be balanced or avoided will need repeated trial and error. As for the negative effects of easily being struck by the lightning in the stormy day, Klein didn't mind. Firstly, unless he was a special region, stormy weather wasn't common to begin with. It was something that needed to be taken into consideration most of the time. Secondly, as a seer, divining the day's weather before heading out was a common act. Finally, he couldn't avoid sudden flash storms. Klein could always give the cane to Enzo. This way, even if the lightning were to strike the winner, it would even up being attracted by nearby lightning rod. Let's just hope I'm not the lightning rod. Klein gave a self-deprecating laugh as he considered the most worrisome negative effects. It would belt out beyonders singing every 6 hours. That was indiscriminate, and it basically a huge AoE and attack. After some thought, Klein decided to communicate with the Sword of the Cane and reduce the frequency at which it sang, or give the prior warning before it sang. I had breakfast early today, and almost time for Creeping Hunger to start its howling. In thought, Klein removed its human skin glove from his left palm and threw it in an empty spot from the junk pile. Right on the heels of that, he lifted the silver-black inlaid cane and threw it over. Then he stirred some of the power of the mysticism space above the gray fog, creating a barrier that isolated all sounds and images. He made Creeping Hunger in the world of the sea spend time alone. After doing all this, Klein rubbed his palms and conjured the pen and paper. He wrote down the divination statement. My scouting of Cauldron City periphery today is dangerous. After putting down the dark red fountain pen, Klein removed the spirit pendulum from his left wrist. He let the topaz hanging down over the paper in proximity with it. After chanting several times in his mind, he opened his eyes and saw the topaz standing still and not spinning. This meant that the divination failed. Cauldron City's actual situation is a secret to the entire spirit world. Divination lacks the starting point. Besides, that was once a divine kingdom of an ancient goddess. There's a mutated resurrection setup left over. There can be simply interfered with the divination. Klein rolled up his spirit pendulum and deliberated and thought. I can only trust what Red Light said. The danger around Cauldron City periphery isn't that great. Besides, I still have marionettes. I can let them go first and confirm if the place screens the great fog. If it can, I can give up. If it doesn't, I'll enter myself. Klein quickly came to the discussion. Without any hesitation, he waved his hands to remove the barrier he had previously created. Then he saw Creeping Hunger, which had retreated to the sides of the junk pile. He was propping himself up with 3 fingers while his thumb and pinky were pressing backwards on Grozel's travels. It looked weak and could hardly stand. At the same time, there was a mouth in the middle of the palm. It revealed 2 illusory white and eerie teeth that kept grasping for air. On the other side of the barrier, the silver inlaid black cane was on the ground. It twitched from time to time as its tips kept oozing with blue transparent water bubbles. Very good, silence at last. Upon seeing the scene, Klein muttered in gratification. Just as he said that, the worlds of the sea suddenly stood up, as though it was being held, it hoped towards Klein, circling around about the fool's seat and dodged elsewhere. Creeping Hunger used all of its 5 fingers and legs as it was being chased by the cane of great difficulty. Midway, it collapsed to the ground. Klein watched speechlessly before letting out a sigh. After fusing with Mr. A, Creeping Hunger seems to have a living characteristic. But this level of intelligence is way too low. It clearly grades the Windblast and is capable of short-distance flight, yet it still uses its fingers as legs to chase. After saying that, he turned his head towards the world of the sea cane, which was hiding beside him. Oh my god, this is so cute! Aren't you a Sequence 5 of the Sailor Pathway? What kind of mystical item are you if you can't hop on one leg? Seriously, are such low-level living characteristics equivalent to babies? No, a particular baby is way smarter than all of you. Bro, this is actually so cute. I fucking love this. This is like reminding me of like the Disney scene in Sleeping Beauty where all the like brooms and like the spoons and all this stuff are like running around. What is it? It was in Fantasia where all the brooms are running. That's what it reminds me. And they're going in like the pot. Klein reprimanded each of them inside as he said in amusement. It's not like I'm the devil, just as he said that the gloves and canes were still staring frozen at the same moment. They didn't dare make a sound. Klein's subsequent words were left in his throat. All he could do was reach out and pick the world of the sea and kindly and strictly speak to it. It's like he has kids! After a friendly and frank negotiation, the silver inlaid black cane used frequency swinging to gesture that it would reduce its singing to a minimum. If it really couldn't hold back, it would inform its owner. The exact manner included, but not limited to, trembling slightly or automatically moving up a few centimeters. At the same time, it raised the request via singing. Never use the hand wearing Creeping Hunger to hold it. Of course, if this master insisted on doing so, I didn't object to it and was happy to accept it. Better than Creeping Hunger, it's not too stubborn. Klein beckoned for Creeping Hunger and wore it on his left palm. Taking the glance at the door of summoning, which had been produced by the ritual, Klein began considering its items to bring the scouting of the Cauldron City. Needless to say, the 2 marionettes were going. They could be used as bait to scout the path ahead, be used as test subjects and verify any traps. They allowed the marionettes to not need and undergo too many dangerous actions, so they were definitely going. They would be wearing Enzo's flower and blood ring and Ludwell's Harrison sword. They were all standing equipment. In addition, Klein decided to get Enzo to carry the world of the sea. As for himself, Klein planned on heading to the spirit body once anything was amiss. He would immediately end the summoning and return to the Grey Fog. This way, clothes what he matched was something worth considering. As a Tupper whistle, no, that was related to death, and Cauldron City belonged to ancient death. There's a small possibility that this might create a terrifying anomaly, causing a danger in the core region to automatically come out. Black Emperor card, the Tyrant card. Moving about the spirit world, the two marionettes are basically dead. I'm not afraid that they will have their blood extracted. Ludwell's half human, half dead entity. He doesn't have any blood to speak of. The value of Enzo's body only makes him appear human most of the time, and this could be recovered via using flowers of blood. It also means that I can bring the Sea God Scepter to Cauldron City. It's a place that's deep in the spirit world. It's far from the Roast Archipelago, so I don't have to worry about being affected by the believers' prayers. The only problem is that I'll become irascible and short-tempered. It'll be easy for me to become hot-headed. This is taboo when it comes to exploring. However, this is easily resolved. I'll leave it with Enzo or Ludwell. Besides, the Tyrant card level is very high. I can produce a suppression effect to a certain degree in the Sea God Scepter, preventing me from easily flaring up. With the combination of the Tyrant card and the Sea God Scepter, I'm equivalent to half a sequence 4. This can be most effective, reduce the risk I face. In the future, even if I were to enter Miss Sharon, I can also equip myself in such a manner. I'll get her to maintain her state as a wraith, no, as an evil spirit state, to circumnavigate the problems. I don't have to worry about the law of conversions. If Cauldron City can see the Grey Fog and return to later the look of outside, no one will lock on to me or ground of the sailor pathway. If Cauldron City can't screen the Grey Fog and a high sequence beyond it, the Church of Shorms really does get drawn there. I can end up using him. Amidst the thoughts, Klein suddenly reached out his hand, attracting the Tyrant card to fall into his palm. Immediately after that, he fused a card of blasphemy to his soul. Suddenly, extreme might and terrifying auras emanated from the Fool's location. A heavy, palpable tiara suddenly appeared from Klein's head as his clothes turned into a religious robe. The latter was similarly in dressing of the Pope of the Saints, Sai, Knights of the Zodiac, when he had seen in his previous life, the latter was similarly dressing as a pope from Saint Cyan, Knights of the Zodiac, which he had seen in his previous life. However, the colors were dark blue that were almost black. As howling winds surrounded the pontiff robe flared up suddenly as Klein raised his right hand and suspended himself in midair before catching the white bone scepter and it floated towards him. At the tip of the scepter, the gems emanated either blinding silver or blue light like bolts of lightning that circled around the tyrant. With a thud, the world and the scepter came prostrated to the ground right beside Klein, who was wielding the scepter and dressed like a pontiff. Bro, new fit for real. Loving this version of Klein. He's really dripped out, and he's double caning it too. That's, double caned up on a Tuesday afternoon. Okay. I really do feel a little irresistible, but I'm not that quick-tempered. Wearing the papal tiara and dark blue robes while wielding the Sea God Scepter, Klein seriously observed his new state. I would also be observing my new state. Klein, we really just went all out for this new look of yours. This meant that the Tyrant card could suppress the negative effects of the Sea God Scepter in certain extent, but it wasn't able to completely eliminate. Using cognition, Klein composed himself and turned to look at the junk pile in the corner. Grozo's Travels. This is my strongest defense item to this day. Besides, I also have some magical uses, but the problem is that it was made by another ancient god, Dragon of Imagination Anklewell. Based on what Little Sun said, the Dragon King was once allies with the owner of the Cauldron City, Ancient Death, Phoenix ancestor Grey Grace, Who knows if this book would trigger any unnecessary developments? To be safe, it's best if I don't bring it. And just like Azek's copper whistle, the mutated paper figurine can't be included. It has the remnant aura of the artificial death. This might have a shock and awe effect when exploring Cauldron City, but it also contains plenty of latent risks. The Priest of Light beyond her characteristics that can effectively restrain dead spirits, a natural nemesis for the city of the dead, but it's also an ingredient that has been made into mystical items. The effect of it is rather limited, and the negative effects are extremely bad. It won't be helpful to my soul state. In addition, lightning can also purify the dead. With the Sea God Scepter and World of the Sea, there's no need for me to bring up the Priest of the Light beyond a characteristic. Thoughts flashed across Klein's mind and eliminated the remaining items in the junk pile. He wore a human skin. Is it music change? Thoughts flashed across the mind's mind. He eliminated the junk pile. He wore a human skin glove on his left hand, wielded Sea God Scepter, and raised his right hand slightly. He made the World of the Sea fly up and land in his palm. Following that, the powerful dressed Klein changed the appearance of his soul. He hid his facial features within the shadows of the powerful tiara. He stood up in dark blue robes flustered in the wind, and his white bone scepter dazzling. With just one step, Tyrant Klein passed through the door of summoning and walked out the candlelit, arriving at the real world. He found himself in a rather spacious bathroom. After aiding the fate siphon charm and death knell into his body, he opened the door and returned to the living room. He got Enzo to come out and receive World of the Sea. After some thoughts, Klein took out death knell and handed it to Admiral Hal Ludwell. After doing all of that, he brought the two marionettes and relied on traveling to head for the coordinates in the spirit world that were provided by Miss Magician. The trip happened rather smoothly. The Tyrant Aura made all kinds of strange spirit world creatures not dare to approach him while en route. They didn't even dare to look up at him directly. Before long, Klein arrived at the destination. The scene in front of him looked no different from anywhere else in the spirit world. The saturated colors were overlapping, and there was some thin fog emanating elsewhere. Everywhere in the depths of the pairs of eyes moved away from one another. The palpable robes caped fluttered gently in the wind as Klein did a rough scan before getting Enzo and Ludwell to enter the blob of the fog. That appeared very thin and normal. Suddenly his field of vision widened as he held his two marionettes. I feel like something's about to happen. I feel like we're about to have something happen. Could be just me thinking this is gonna happen and, jumping to conclusions, but with marionettes, the Grand City was a legendary proportion appeared in his eyes. The city was abnormal, didn't develop in a vertical manner, but instead spiraled deep into the ground. It gave one feeling of inverted mausoleum. Its buildings had major myriads of styles, but they were equivalently strange. Some of them had towering pale white rock columns with a huge single house carved out at the top. Some were long and squarish, with the doors placed at the ceiling with no windows in sight. Some were built to the ground, the tombstones eradicated their entrance. Some were built to the white bones, messy and scattered. The closer was to the bottom of the pit, the more completely preserved the buildings were. The closer they were to the top, the more collapsed areas they were filled with dilapidation and rot that time brought. Klein made his two marionettes stop despite standing at the edge of the city and looking over everything. He was unable to identify what was at the bottom of the building. Deep darkness enveloped the area as though no light had been shone inside thousands and thousands of years. After a brief obstacle, Enzo lowered his head and chanted using ancient Hermes. The fool that does not belong to this era, the mysterious ruler above the great fog, the king of yellow and black who wields good luck. Just as he finished the sentence, Klein, who was still situated outside Cauldron City, heard stacked illusory pleas. He also recognized that it was from a man with deliberately hoarse voice. It's the marionette's prayer from before. Klein heaved a sigh of relief and silently muttered, "This means that Cauldron City doesn't screen out the gray fog. At the very least, its outer periphery doesn't. I can't enter." Although he said it to himself, he was in no way in a hurry. He subsequently controlled Ludwell to raise his left palm and spread it open. Illusory light was suddenly emanating. Following that, with a point as its origins, the area imploded, forming a pair of double bronze doors. The doors were slightly blurry and extremely incorporeal. The surface was covered in countless mysterious patterns and gave one the feeling of indescribable heaviness and Silence. With a creak, the mysterious bronze doors stiffened backward and cracked open a little bit. Through this crack, Klein saw the deepest and heaviest darkness. Amidst the darkness, pale white colors stirred, swirling up at times and descending at other times. It was like a river that was gushing through the night devoid of light. On its two sides, pale white stone columns appeared, looking extremely identical in Caldron City's interior, but its more exaggerated manner. At this time, pairs of transparent eyes and indescribable faces suddenly appeared. They filled the illusory bronze door and cracked eagerly, trying to pass through. Klein's eyes felt a stabbing pain as he immediately made Ludwell clench his left palm. Thud. The illusory door covered the mysterious patterns, was pushed by the invisible force and closed, disappearing from Enzo's sight. The mysterious door that separated life from death and leads to the underworld has apparently changed its course. It's no longer the underworld behind the door, but a core region of Caldron City, the deepest point at the bottom of the pit. Wearing the papal tiara while wielding the sea god scepter, Klein nodded in thought. This way, many of the powers in the Death's domain was remained by Caldron City, causing an anomaly. With his knowledge, Klein once again got Ludwell to raise his left arm. The left part of his marionette's body rapidly turned illusory, and dark green specks appeared as though he had turned into a wraith or spectator. His arm began to stop, abide by the laws and reality, as it suddenly extended into distance. The center of its palm was abnormally white, and an illusory face protruding from it. The face had his mouth half open, and his tongue was sharp, like snake's. It was covered in white fur. In a completely surreal manner, the tongue flicked out far into the distance. It was as though it could drill directly into a human body and absorb one's soul. Indeed, the death envoy powers Ludwell gets from the underworld creature inside his body had mutated. Not only has it been enhanced, but it has also gone from remotely extracting spirit bodies to directly consuming them. Klein stood at Caldron's entrance and made Admiral Hell display all kinds of beyonder powers of the death domain. Through that, he gleaned the differences that were from the usual outcome. The thing that had common was that all of them had become more powerful. Then Klein experimented by making Enzo use the specialness of his body and various powers from Flower of Blood and Word of the Sea before coming up with conclusion. Aspects of Fate's domain aren't affected. Lightning strike is suppressed, making it much weaker, unable to fly too high. Powers like wind blades, singing, illusory scales, balance, and water membrane undergo no change. With the end of these experiments, Klein made Enzo and Ludwell walk down the pale white stars, clinging closely in periphery of Caldron City. Living close to the buildings that had already completely collapsed. As the 200-meter threshold approached, Klein raised his right hand and pressed down on his face and hid the shadows of the palpable tiara. Then, wielding the sea god scepter, he stepped into the thin fog. His mind instantly felt a little groggy, and the scene before him changed. He had already entered the city of the dead, Caldron City, and during the irresistible feelings within him, Klein made his left glove turn dark. His body turned illusory, and he tainted the dark color, turning him into a shadow. Only the sea god scepter in his hand continued emanating silver or blue beams from light. Using his soul screeching and the tyrant's card suppression that hid the light, Klein floated diagonally ahead, shrinking into the shadows and collapsed buildings. He followed closely behind the two marionettes being performed in initial inspection of Caldron City outer region. As he traversed the area, Klein gradually noticed something amiss. It was too quiet. It was too quiet that it was as though the entire city was dead. Even bugs had failed to survive. Based on what a Rhodes and Red Light Aurora had said, the Phoenix ancestor Grey Grace had uprooted Caldron City and thrown it deep into the spirit world. Before doing so, the residents inside the city were allowed to leave. Occasionally, there would be other spirits, world creatures entering. Interesting. Bye, Alma, and also bye, Harsh. Have a good night. It was so quiet that entered the city. Based on the Rhodes and the Red Light, Aurora Mora had said Phoenix ancestor Grey Grace had uprooted Caldron City. There would be other spirits entering. But now, not only were there no active creatures in the periphery region, there weren't even skeleton zombies or even two non-bone-like buildings. Klein tensed up more and more with Enzo and Ludwell's vision. He carefully observed the surroundings. During the process, he swept across the broken pale white columns, the ancient but damaged building at the top of the disc, burnished from gold inside. The disc's smooth surface reflected a figure, but it wasn't Enzo, but Klein in his purple tiara and dark blue robe. This Klein had a gloomy demeanor. His face was pale and his eyes were listless, as though he had long been dead. Oh, interesting. Okay. Weren't lying. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Appreciate it always. I don't know if you can tell, but I think the last time I got a compliment on this page was the last time somebody tried to say that I was pretty. Maybe like 100 chapters ago. And everybody said, "You don't have to lie." Well, maybe some people just think I'm pretty, guys. Maybe some people are just like, "You know what? She's a pretty girl." So thank you. I appreciate it. Clearly it's not a common assumption, you know? The blind, maybe. Yeah, well, there it is. Okay, chapter 9:27, Tyrant's Might. Heading to the shadows, Klein's heart tightens. He then quickly calmed down without showing any signs of horror. This was because he was extremely certain that the reflection of the golden disc's smooth surface wasn't him. At least it wasn't the real him. If it was the real him, Enzo would have seen the grey fog, seeing the magical scenes that resembled the mystical creature's form. This would have caused Klein to faint immediately. Since I'm completely fine, this means that the reflection isn't of me. Klein activated his spirit body threads, vision controlled Enzo, and raised the world of the sea. He approached the pale white collapsed column and the ancient building, which remained in shambles, while secretly releasing some of his luck. This weighty marionette approached the golden disc on step at a time, bending his back and raising his cane. He carefully observed the area. The disc had two layers, an inner and outer layer. The core region was a smooth... Come back. Come back. There it is. It was smooth as a mirror and a very few patterns. The boundary was engraved in bird-like creatures. Its entirety had ancient magnificence to it. The figure it reflected remained the same. Despite reflecting Enzo, it reflected a gloomy pale Klein with listless eyes. Even the sea god scepter with purple tiara and purple robes. KK. Even if the sea god scepter with purple tiara and purple robes that came to the tyrant card weren't missing, if it were because of the lack of the grey fog, Klein definitely would have imagined that the disc could influence himself through the marionette and spirit body. Perhaps it would be like what the Saint of Darkness Black in the ruins of the Battle of Gods had encountered before, himself dissociating without realizing it. What does this actually mean? Klein calmly grew out of the shadows, resorting to his appearance back when he first stepped into Caldron City. Then, using his beyonder powers of the clown, he produced and presented state in the mind. Holding the white bone scepter and emanating blue gems, he wore a caped purple robe with purple tiara and different gems dotting it. His face was hidden in the shadows, appearing somewhat blurry. His entire body exhibited a gloomy and cadaveric air, as though he was a zombie and he was recently dug out. Klein was alarmed. He never expected to really experience such changes, apart from the grey fogs mixing with the reality. The reflection on the golden disc really was him, something that it didn't involve the grey fog. If it's anything to worry too much about, he hurriedly consoled himself and calmed his mental state. Normally with Klein, his rich experience and good ability to adapt, there was nothing that needed to do at the moment. But first, considering how he was holding the sea god scepter, it easily made him rash. He needed to pay a consistent attention. Second, he knew that he was one Saphinic ancestor, Grey Grace, Divine Kingdom, which contained the setup required for her revival. There was bound to be all kinds of abnormalities. Therefore, he was more nervous than ever before. Getting Ludwell to return, he used his beyonder powers to do through an inspection of himself before gaining preliminary understanding. When living creatures enter Caldron City, they will naturally transform into the deceased. This is similar to the underworld, but there's a fundamental difference. Here, living creatures won't die in abrupt death before slowly turning into mindless, undead creatures. Instead, they will directly turn to dead spirits. I didn't notice it before because Enzo and Ludwell were essentially dead, so there's no need for them to be converted. Rhodes and Red Light Aurora Mori didn't mention this because they're travelers. Spirit world creatures and angels automatically recover after leaving alive. This kind of transformation is unable to affect the powers of the gray fog that fuse with reality. And the disc reflects the dead me, not all of me, or the me that has had some interaction with Calderon. Klein was more inclined to believe in the latter, but he wasn't too sure. At that moment, he heard a sound coming from a nearby clang, clang, clang. The sound was heavy but crisp, as though someone was striking metal heavily. Klein wasn't in a hurry to react. He carefully listened for 2 seconds before letting Enzo put down the heavy golden disc and walk towards the nearby broken tombstone. The heaved tombstone corresponding to the building developed further underground. On top of it were the words written in the language of the dead. A quick-tempered fellow who dies as a result of comparing which was harder, his head or someone else's hammer. Enzo circled around the damaged tombstone and arrived at the entrance of the tomb. He reached out his left hand and turned the knob before opening the door. Amidst the rough grinding sounds of the rust, the heavy door slowly opened. Pale white beams of arrows-like flew out. They brushed past Enzo's face and the top of his head, torso, and inner lights and thighs flew to the distance, stabbing into the ground before vanishing. However, Winter Enzo was completely unharmed. I have to say that such a marionette is an excellent for dangerous explorations. Klein sighed inwardly as he made Enzo cast a gaze down at the building. It was black. It was a blacksmith, a giant and bluish black skin and a head that looked like a ruptured watermelon onto a hammer as he kept striking an anvil, but there was nothing on it. As a giant and cracked head's normal spirit body threads and wasn't a soul avatar of someone else, Klein secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Just as he was about to get Enzo to take a more thorough look, his body suddenly turned numb and thoughts turned sluggish. Love it. I don't know how many more chapters, but we're at least doing like 13. The feeling was something that I'd never felt for. Back in Tingen, he had been in a similar state when there was under sealed artifact 2-049's influence. Klein didn't know better back then, but becoming a marionnettist, he knew that this meant that the spirit body threads had been controlled by a sealed artifact. This also meant that someone was controlling the spirit body threads. Furthermore, the difference from being was that not only were just rusting, as though someone had infused glue to them. He also felt a strong numbness, as if he had been struck by lightning. It made his actions become harder. No good, it's a spirit world plunderer. I was guarded against its use of soul avatar. It distracted me and secretly approached, but I never expected that it not only had a soul avatar, but it also has a partner. That giant blacksmith made me careless, and the marionnettist existence made me ignore my own safety. Various thoughts emerged in Klein's mind, involuntary as he disrupted his normal thoughts of trying to save himself. At this moment, the giant blacksmith with a ruptured head raised his hammer and rushed over to Enzo, hopping and smashing onto a pulp. Hopping and smashing into a pulp, and by Klein's neck there was a cold wind blowing at it, pricking his hair one by one. The surroundings were abnormally silent before, but now all kinds of strange creatures emerged from the pale white stone column, run-down houses, and all the tombstones. Some of them only had half a body, others were transparent and nearly invisible. Some were stretched and soft like noodles, some had ruptured chests with bloody innards, some had dark green faces that resembled that of an evil spirit, others had eyes glowing elsewhere around their body. There was also others who looked like jellyfish that lived near the air. Countless gazes were cast on Klein from different areas. They were without any feeling, just indifferent. At this moment, Klein opened his mouth with great difficulty. He said with words slowly, "Sing." Just as he said that, the gloves of his left palm opened, its mouth revealing white teeth. "Praise you, the Lord that created everything, the Lord who reigns behind the curtain of shadows." No fucking way. The degenerated nature of all living things. Amidst the jarring voice that resembled blackboard stretching sound, Enzo, who had been thrown to the ground, successfully avoided the hammer's strike, as a world of sea began spewing out water bubbles in excitement. Break, break, break. Klein suddenly felt his headache as his ability to think was instantly recovered, no longer having disconnected thoughts for a brief moment. However, his body remained rusted as his body was filled with numbness. Following that, he relied on his spirituality. While motionless, controlling Ludwell, he had returned to his side to punch him with his left fist. Klein staggered back, instantly extracting himself from the numbness and sluggish state. Then, wearing a papal tiara, he became hot-headed to spread his palpable cane and raise Seagod scepter. The blue gems lit up one after another as a bright silver bolt of lightning blasted down. The bolt of lightning spread into branches, blanketing Caldron City's periphery hundreds of meters with a lightning forest. The destructive aura, sense of destruction, were brought from the forefront. The strange creature that had charged out from various spots shattered, evaporating and completely vanishing to the result of the swathe of silver. Moments after the silver storm quelled, Tyrant Klein's Seagod scepter emanated a blinding light once again. Oh my god. The rapturous bolts of lightning snaked and broiled from areas, smiting down again and again at a huge wave. After 2 repeated casts of Lightning Storm, Klein was exhausted and found his calm again. His heart beat suddenly as he recalled something. Lightning Storm was indiscriminate when it struck apart from the Seagod scepter, wielding him and the parent who stood behind him. Everything else suffered in indiscriminately black. Blast. This also meant that Ludwell was still fine, but there was a high chance of Enzo being wiped out. Klein instinctively looked over and saw Enzo curled by the side of a heaved tombstone. Behind him was the huge metallic hammer, which still had tiny bolts of lightning snaking around it. Not far from it, there was a non-human charred legs. The tomb corresponding to the tombstone had already collapsed. The iron blank tiles from the landed the ground still had remained silver bolts of lightning sizzling away. As expected of the winner, he didn't even die despite such an onslaught. The amount of luck he accumulated had possibly been passively extended. Klein felt revealed as he activated spirit body visions to observe the surroundings. He was searching for the spirit world plunderer. He believed that the rage of the spirit world plunderer's control of the spirit body threads could match that of a lightning storm. The already dilapidated buildings had nearly been leveled. The remaining stone pieces and bones were mostly charred black. Even the heavy golden disc was in shambles. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the rubble more than 100 meters away from Klein. It was wearing a translucent robe, but didn't have a head or limbs. It appeared like it was being propped up by an invisible person. At that moment, he looked at the sorry state that wounded and black marks everywhere. This was the spirit world plunderer, I suppose. My rash usage of lightning storms seemed to have restrained it. Upon seeing his scene, Klein had such thoughts flash through his mind. I love how Klein was gonna wait for somebody to do this, and now he's just like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm doing it. And I'm like, pop off, Klein. I'm so proud of you. I'm really proud. I'm really proud of that you're doing this all by yourself. Just a big boy now. At this point, Klein had roughly understood the situation. Due to the law of bionic characteristic convergent, he had been targeted by the spirit world plunderer the moment he entered Caldron City, which didn't even have ordinary dead spirits. It first moved like the golden disc of unknown origins and predicted path, allowing his marionette to see while walking past. As such, his attention was transferred to the transformation effect Caldron City had on the living. Following that, he used the giant blacksmith, which was in its sole avatar, to distract him further. Finally, it secretly arrived within control distance and achieved success in one try. If it wasn't because he had seen those decreased bodies that are hung up like the wind chimes of the cathedral, thus having instincting and indescribable fear of high sequence beyonders of the seer pathway, and having prepared several autonomous means to disrupt any incursion for control over me, I might already have made my soul avatar by the spirit world plunderer. Seriously, I should have thought of the law beyond a characteristics convergence before I came in. After carrying the Seagod scepter, even with the tyrant card suppressing it, I'm still a little too rash. I nearly missed out on such a crucial detail. On the surface, I didn't seem too cautious, as I usually am, but in fact I turned to a rash without realizing it yet. I didn't even believe I was being too rash. Klein's thoughts raced before he raised the bone scepter wielding arm and continued using lightning storm. It once wasn't enough, make it twice. If that still wasn't enough, do it a third time. In short, he had taken the opportunity to prevent the spirit world plunderer from escaping from the rage of his attacks. This was the safest method, and it was also Klein's fighting style that he had looked at the most. If it wasn't because Lightning Strike had been gradually weakened in Caldron City, he even suspected that he could have gone over to pick up the Beyond characteristics already. And having already digested most of the Sequence 5 potion, his spirituality suffered sufficient enough for him to deal with such damage in white. At this moment, the invisible figure wearing translucent white robe burst into pale white flames. It appeared in mid-air several hundred meters away. The Spirit World Plunderer had used Flaming Jump, which had many times stronger than Klein's version, instantly pulling away from him. At the same time, in the rubble, it was hiding in a 4 meter tall bush. Bluish black giant staggered to his feet. The giant's chest was open, but there weren't any innards. However, it stood like a castle, standing in between the tyrant and the spirit world plunderer, blocking Klein's line of sight. And in Klein's eyes, the spirit body threads were gathered together, extending far towards the spirit world plunderer. It was obvious that it was a soul avatar. At the tip of the sea god scepter, the blue-colored gems lit up. A few bolts of lightning leaped out of the air, mixing together into a huge silver arrow. Instantly, it smote the bluish black giant head. All the invisible defenses shattered, and like paper mache, the giant's head cracked. Countless bits of charred flesh splattered in its headless body, evaporated amidst the white gases that were tainted with dark green spots. All its vitality was robbed away. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Klein, in his purple tiara and purple robe, raised his bone scepter even higher. This blue light radiated in ripples as howling wind blew up his cape. In a very large area of Caldron City periphery, dark clouds quickly gathered under a suppressive layer. They made the area appear darker and more repressed. Smack, smack, smack. Bean-sized drops of water smashed to the ground, releasing dust and accumulated over time. The raindrops patterned in an indescribable pace, forming a catastrophic storm. The water extinguished the pale white flames and formed the stem of gushed downwards towards the lowest point of the city, right for the end of the deep pit. In such weather, Klein's flaming jump had been made ineffective, but it was likewise for the spirit world plunderer. However, to the tyrant, his spirituality could spread through the dark circles as though he had transformed into a deity that overlooked the land. Every dark cloud, every drop of water had become Klein's eyes. They allowed him to easily find the spirit world plunderer. In every area that had its weather changed, its invisible figures with the translucent white robe was hiding behind a broken pale white column. It hadn't left its periphery for the core region. The deafening boom sounded as bolts of lightning meshed to form a silver beam that shot out for the dark clouds, right in the spirit world plunderer. Relying on its potent spiritual premonitions, the invisible figure burrowed onto the ground half a second early. 3 thick silver beams smote the area one after another, melting the soil away as they sank downwards, producing charred craters. The spirit world plunderer emerged from another spot on the hurriedly dodged, keeping to the right at times and left at other times, as though it was carrying out snaking dodge maneuvers. However, regardless of where it fled to, the silver beams would chast up to it. They even blocked its path ahead of the time, preventing it from attempting to leave the stormy region. Boom, boom, boom. The deity akin to the tyrant who looked down from the dark clouds of the spirit world plunderer waved his scepter and struck down again and again as his targets with success, barely undulating him several times. Klein turned more and more anxious, eager to immediately end the hunt. Hence he unreservedly triggered the sea god scepter to increase the frequency which bolts and lightning struck down. Suddenly he felt a strong sense of exhaustion. This alarmed Klein for realizing that something was amiss. The spirit world plunderer had a chance of retreating deeper into Caldron City at the beginning, so why is it staying around? It's clearly a spirit world creature without a physical body. It can burrow underground to avoid the lightning and the tyrant noise. So why is it circulating around from time to time? It's trying to make me attack. It has noticed that I'm not a demigod through the spirit body threads and control over my marionette. I wish to drain me of my spirituality. Klein was alarmed, combining its original counter. He became realization of how intelligent the spirit world plunderer was and its rather crafty creature. At the same time, he also thought of a problem. Could lightning storm and the storm rain attract the notice of dangerous existences in the core region of Caldron City? I'm too rash. I keep neglecting the critical details. As though thoughts flashed through his mind, Klein put away the sea god scepter. Heavy storms stopped, and the dark clouds quickly scattered, the weather resorting to normal. And so Klein made Enzo return to his side of the sea, and he got Ludwell to protect him in the middle. Following that, he made 2 meters walk out as though they were trying to leave Caldron City, where he still had some spirituality left. During this process, Klein had his spirit body threads, vision constantly activated to prevent the spirit world plunderer from approaching him. He noticed that his creature's spirit body threads were somewhat special. A portion of them came out from its body and extended outwardly normal. A number materialized externally and were bound together in a thick bundle right into the translucent white robe. Klein suspected that this was the state when the spirit world plunderer controlled the soul avatar, making it different from the marionettes. As he shifted his gaze, he suddenly saw the thin black illusory threads coming out of the collapsed house. A portion of them gathered into a thick bunch with its source in the distance. Klein didn't hesitate to raise his sea god scepter, creating a sonorous thunderclap. Amidst the sound that struck in awe into one's mind and spirit, Ludlow suddenly raised his left hand. Half his body instantly turned illusory as his arm extended out extensively, heading straight for the collapsed house. Midway, his palm turned abnormally white, pale white, an illusory face protruded out, stuck out with a snake-like tongue which had white fur covering its surface. The tongue reached far out, penetrating the wall and stabbing at the spot where the spirit body threads were gathered. It immediately stuck on the disordered and blurred soul. Around the soul, a number of spirit body threads suddenly disappeared as though they never existed. A portion of them was none other than the gathered, bundled ones that came from after. They were fake. The spirit world plunderer was able to create fake, illusory spirit world plunders, or instantly swap locations between the soul avatar and itself. Klein suddenly turned his head and looked elsewhere. Indeed, he saw a blob of spirit world threads swim over from underground at fast speeds. He once again used Sea God Scepter, releasing a thunderous clap close to the ground, one that could awe his spirit body. Meanwhile, Enzo expended some of his remaining luck, adding back to the target. Then he shot out a silver bolt of lightning from the tip of this world in the sea. The bolt of lightning rather luckily passed through a crack and entered the ground, striking the assailant directly. It caused a portion of the spirit body threads to instantly vanish. It was also fake. Just as Klein retracted, his thoughts paused and his body turned numb. Just as he opened his mouth with great difficulty to instruct the mythical items, the invisible figure in the translucent robe descended from above, landing right before him. The spirit world plunderer had been hiding high in the sky, cloaking itself with grayish-white clouds. The moment this invisible figure appeared, maggots began crawling out of his collar where his head should be. There were maggots with strange patterns covering them. Just one look at them sent his mind reeling. Although he broke out of control of spirit body threads, he also lost his ability to think. His face that was shadowed by the palpable tiara began to grow meat tendrils. Each tendril was relatively transparent, like squirming worms. If it wasn't for the tyrant's card level supporting him, he would have fallen to the ground when struggling in pain. The spirit world plunderer had mystical creatures form a certain extent. At this moment, the invisible figure inside the white robe began to control Klein's spirit body threads without any obstacles in the way. A few seconds, it was already close to succeeding. Seeing that the prey was about to become a soul avatar, the spirit world plunderer suddenly saw its target open his mouth with great difficulty and say a word that he recovered from the state of nearly losing control faster than it had anticipated, and the world was in ancient Hermes, fate. It had an incantation for the fate siphon charm. If Klein really wanted to leave, he would have grabbed his two marionettes and directly ended the summoning to return above the grey fog. He would have walked to the cauldron entrance. He was playing a trap for the spirit world plunderer. The reason why he could recover so quickly from the injuries dealt him by the mythical creature form, and why he was able to chant the relevant words, was because he had experienced such situations too many times. Besides, although he wasn't sure what method his opponent was using, there were definitely a rather well-rounded way to deal with it, making his target unlucky. Just as Klein entered a sluggish state, his first reaction wasn't to make the mythical item sing, but to let Enzo extend all his luck, making the spirit world plunderer have enough bad luck. Oh wait, I didn't even change that. I don't even know what the next chapter is. So Chapter 929, True Soul Body, Fate. As it dragged out of the absurd ancient Hermes term resounded with spots that were spirit world plunderer, Klein stood suddenly darkened. It was very obvious as though the cloud had drifted over the mid-air without stopping. But when the illusory shadow dissipated and the visible figure that was donning the translucent white Did I spell it wrong? No, I spelled it right. Shadow dissipated and the visible figure was donning a translucent white robe. Stood frozen on the spot. The surface of its clothes showed signs of worms crawling across it. It was sluggish, slow, and in a dire state. Across it, Klein's eyes had the lucidity return. Mint tendrils and slowly faced beneath the palpable tiara vanished. It appeared as though it wasn't a spirit world plunderer who had controlled Klein's spirit body threads and nearly succeeded. Instead, it appeared as though Klein was the one who was controlling it. It had nearly converted it into a marionette. The fate siphon charms switched one's fate. This was a high-level charm made using the worm of time. It could be siphoned off the target's subsequent fate, and in a short period of time, burdened it with that of the target, so as to complete the exchange fate. Therefore, Klein and the spirit world plunderer situation had switched. One went from the death to survival, while the other went from victory to instant despair. After confirming that the spirit world plunderer was intelligent and extremely difficult to deal with, making it difficult to hunt it, Klein began putting on an act of recreating his appeared rash and deliberately walked to the spirit world plunderer's control, enticing its actions ready to use the fate siphon charm in a critical moment. That way, the terrible acts the spirit world plunderer did to its enemies and charms then would allow its experience to despair. Of course, this fate siphon charm didn't have the expected effects, or of the spirit world plunderer main soul didn't appear, and it ended up using the other means to control the situation. Klein still had the last trick up his sleeve to protect himself, directly end the summoning and return above the grey fog. He would sacrifice his 2 marionettes and a few mythical creatures in order to ensure his own safety. Without the time of the marvel how magical the fate siphon charm was, or how terrifying angels from the Marauder pathway were, Klein didn't hesitate to raise the sea god scepter up high before swapping the fates eroded. The dark blue palpal robe flared up with the wind as the golden palpal tiara emanated meshed blue and silver beams of light. At the tip of the white bone scepter, it shot out bolts of lightning that gathered into a ball before landing on the spirit world plunderer. A swathe of silver-colored brightening immediately inundated the target, turning the surrounding white. Once, twice, thrice, Klein continuously targeted terrifying lightning balls, expending his spirituality without holding back. Finally, he heard the roar seemed to stem from the depths of one's soul, and instantly sensed that his target had collapsed and dissipated. Only then did Klein lower the sea god scepter and watch the silver lightning sizzle away. At that moment, his entire spirit body had returned rather illusory. Even for the tyrant's augmentation, it didn't seem real. At this light dispersed, the invisible figure in the white translucent robe appeared once again in Klein's signal. Flickering light emerged from within the spirit world plunderer's body cracked, turning into countless illusory bubbles that disintegrated bit by bit. The tyrant had succeeded in the hunt. At this moment, deep within Cauldron City, there was a sudden quake. It was as though the massive creature had awoken as a result of the spirit world plunderer's death, or the countless dangerous creatures were surging out. The indiscernible feeling combined with the swathe of illusory grayish white, and like a tidal wave rose up from the bottom. Other spirit world plunderer? No, it appeared to be more terrifying and horrifying creature. Being that the spirit world plunderer tends to. Also, in Cauldron City's core region at the end of the deep pit, it's still as silent as ever. There's no sound at all, making it more horrifying. Klein plumped himself up and diverted some attention in order to monitor the situation inside Cauldron City, as he anxiously waited for the spirit world plunderer's characteristic to appear form an ingredient. He wasn't relishing in the delight of successful hunt. It was pacing about anxiously at the edge of the abyss. During the process, Klein got Enzo and Ludwell to stay close to him. He threw his sea god scepter in the former, so as to escape the state of irascibility. He began considering how to deal with the subsequent developments with a clear mind, as well as consider whether he had missed out on some other details. As the thoughts flashed in his mind, Klein suddenly recalled something. Back when he made a mythical item saying Creeping Hunger had praised the true creator and used his complete honorific name. Although the human skin glove had used Hermes instead of ancient Hermes or other languages that could stir the powers of nature, the former was still unable when he came to sacrifices. This also meant that the true creator might have very well heard Creeping Hunger's praises and noticed the commotion here. Apart from the raising grayish white tide and the terrifying creatures deep down in the city, there was other dangers. Wait, I'm now a spirit body equivalent to that of a wraith. I'm not in my normal state. Just as Klein's mind thought of something, and spiritual perception was triggered as he instinctively cast his gaze to the entrance of Cauldron City. The lights there flickered as a figure entered. The figure was wearing a simple and ordinary linen robe with the head of silver hair. He had a handsome man with soft facial features. His eyes were gentle and some hints of coldness. It was as though he was observing the fates of everyone in the world like a spectator. Behind him there was beams forming illusory layers of pure wings. They spread outward, blocking the entire entrance. Klein nearly hissed through the gaps of his teeth as the series of titles and names flashed across his mind. Ouroboros, Tail Devourer, Angel of Fate, King of Angels. He didn't have the luxury of time to consider the possibility of the previous thought. His body expanded as though it was incorporeal, enveloping his marionettes, Enzo and Ludwell, to yet appear characteristics in the spirit world plunderer's remnant bubbles within. At this moment, Ouroboros says, "No fucking way." Silver Eyes already had the distant figure. I sounded like a fucking... sound like one of the zombies from The Last of Us. What are they called? Clickers? It was a figure wearing a palpable tiara and dark blue robe, exuding extreme oppression and tyranny. There were grayish white fog that had been blurred by the tyranny's aura. The river of flickering light appeared in his eyes, seaming the circle of terror and figured of the periphery of the cauldron. Crazy. No, that's so fair. Like, here's the thing. If I was a true creator, I would also be pissed. I'd be like, bro, you have been fucking up my shit since day one. Since you came to this world, you have been coming after me, and I'm kind of over it, you know? I would be doing the same thing. Can't even blame him. At this moment, Ouroboros' silver-haired, already distant figure, his sights were the figure wearing a palpable tiara and the dark blue robe exuding extreme oppression and tyranny. There were grayish-white fog that had been blurred out with the tyranny's aura. The river of flickering light appeared on his eyes, seeming the circle of tyranny figure in peripheral Cauldron City. Silently, the square houses and pale white columns stood up, despite being destroyed by the lightning storm from before. The charred legs of the giant black smythe once again possessed a body and appeared inside the tomb, striking an anvil. Ooh. All this returned to what it was like shortly after the tyrant stepped in. However, Klein, in his pontiff attire, had vanished. His two marionettes, along with the remnant bubbles of the spirit world plunderer, had vanished as well. The corresponding figure was unable to return as he rebooted the scene, shattered, turning back into the desolate state after the battle. You know, as one does. As one does, you know. As one does. Tail Devourer Ouroboros watched silently for a while before making a move. The grayish-white swathe that rose up from the depths of the Cauldron City slowly receded back down. Crazy. Crazy. Bro. Because I feel like...
Word today is broken. Every day, people...
No. I feel like, here's the thing. I feel like I just gotta love Klein for really just trying it. He just, you know, he just kind of goes and does stuff. And it somehow just, like, works out in his favor a lot of the time. I'm not complaining. The amount of times Klein should have died... Now that I'm looking back on, like, the past 4 books that I've read, the amount of times that motherfucker should have died. He did die once, but I feel like he should have died a lot more times. Crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Yeah. Above the gray fog, Klein slumped into the high-backed chair of the fool in exhaustion. He wasn't even able to get Enzo and Ludwell to message him. He had already thrown the Sea God Scepter back into the junk pile, and the Tyrant card left his soul body was facing back down in the Empire's black card. The Spirit World Plunderer bubbles were floating ahead of the Bionic characteristics constantly, seeping out before combining with the points of light. After resting for a while, Klein saw grayish-white powder fall into the molted table's surface. Okay. Following that was a transparent item that seemed weightless. The item was the size of a palm, formed in the coiled maggots. It almost shaped like a human, and its interior was filled with colorless liquid. Bubbles often emerged, scattering black hints of light. Klein didn't dare to look at it carefully, as there was a more complicated structure in the weightless, transparent object. They formed indiscernible patterns and symbols that seemed to fuse knowledge, power, transformation, secrets, bitterness, and madness within, making them no longer abstract. This made Klein feel very dizzy. His mind was even on the verge of breaking down, with his soul almost losing control. This was likely the true soul of the Spirit World Plunderer. I have the corresponding powder as well. There's about 70 grams more than I need. It's more than I expected. Klein nodded indiscernibly and stored the powder into a box together with the true soul body. He threw items into the junk pile. I love how he just, like, these are, like, priceless fucking items that he risks his life for. And he just has them in a little junk pile. And covered in with the gray fog. After completing this, he raised his hand and rubbed his temples to make a self-deprecating remark. If it wasn't for the Sea God Scepter, I probably would have had to leave Cauldron City due to the assault on the Spirit World Plunderer. I would then wait until I had helpers, and could make the most solid of the hunting plan, so as to not control the sting of the area and alarm the unknown entity in the core region. I was rationed the entire time, although the outcome was fine. It really doesn't suit my character. It also completely at odds with the seer pathway acting. In the future, I should try to avoid using the sea god scepter in the outside world. The spirit world plunderer has been successfully hunted. There's no need for me to go get Miss Sharon's help. In a few days, I'll write to her that she won't be thinking over this matter. However, I have a premonition that I'll still be heading to the Cauldron City in the future. When this happens, perhaps I might still need Miss Sharon's help. In addition, I have to seek out information on Bizarro Banes. I can put all my hope in the City of Silver. Amidst his thought, Klein directly returned his body without bringing any marionettes. He ended the ritual and headed straight for bed, falling asleep the moment his head hit the pillow. Escaped? Soas looked at the man opposite him and asked Dally Simone, who was carrying out a spirit channeling. They had just finished operations and had captured the few Numinous Episcopate members. However, they kept the key personnel, and intel pointed at, hand of the white palanquy tuberculosis. Tachybilius. Tachybliss wasn't at the secret gathering points. He was a Sequence 4 demigod. Therefore, not only had the Red Gloves team used a Grade 1 sealed artifact. Taco! Tucker, are you saying chorizo tacos right now? Do not fuck with me. They had even requested Golden Eyes Ilias' help. However, it was all futile. Dally Simone nodded. Yes. Then she looked at the captive, suddenly speaking with an ethereal voice. Oh fuck, they're saying the name again. Palanque Tachybilis. I sound like I'm doing a spell. I sound like I'm at Hogwarts practicing spells and shit. Go. He said he was going to meet someone. The Numinous Episcopate member answered slowly. Who is this person? Dally Simone pressed over Leonard Mitchell and completely cast his gaze over. The man who was being spirit channeled answered with an unperturbed voice. In Sangwell! Okay, I'm on the next chapter. Oh my god. Former or... Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Bro, I acted as if In Sangwell betrayed me. We're gonna do 5 more chapters. I'm gonna stop at chapter 936. That way, tomorrow, I just have 10 chapters. And then I'll just finish 9, because it's 936, 946, so I'll just finish 936, 946. Did I spell organization wrong? What did I spell wrong? Oh, I added an A. That's my bad, you know. That's my bad. That's on me. Okay, in Zangwell. Upon hearing that name, the red glove person fell. Not a single one spoke for a moment. I would also not be speaking. I would be silenced. Ever since the former bishop betrayed and fled the Church of Evernight had relaxed its pursuit of him. Archbishop, high-ranking deacons, who all took up high posts and taken turns being responsible for searching for him. They helped each other, often bringing relevant sealed artifacts everywhere to search for clues about him, but ultimately they were unable to clock onto Insangwell. He slipped away as a result of all kinds of coincidences. His shadow wasn't even noticed. Furthermore, he had caused several major events that killed many Nighthawks. To the Church of Evernight, especially the Nighthawks, when somebody had hated, they also insulted them. Oh my god. Without realizing it, Leonard Mitchell had already clenched his hanging fist and breathing grew deeper. He soon forced himself to extract himself from the sudden emotions that emerged within him. He turned his attention to something else. It was no wonder Dwayne Dantes was able to meet in Sangwell on Waypoint Island in the Berserk Sea. It was because the latter's goal was also the southern continent, East Balam. Amidst everyone's silence, Dally Simone immediately used her spirit body to emanate an ethereal voice without any obvious changes. With some coldness, she spoke at the quieter pace. Where are they meeting? The Numinous Episcopate's members shook his head blankly. I don't know. Dally raised a few more questions, but she didn't get an ideal answer. Finally, she took a step back and cast her eyes at the Red Gloves team captain, Soas. Soas sighed and deliberated over his words before saying, First, we need to inform the piece of intel to Her Excellency Goddess Eyes. We shall leave it to her to contact the Holy Cathedral. Ince, who has 0-08 with him, isn't someone on the Red Glove team can handle. Second, we should continue investigating the following. The clue pertaining to Palanquy. Fucking Holy shit. Palanque Taco. Let's hope that we can figure out Insango's motives. With the situation of us not being able to track him or lock onto him, grasping his motives is more important than knowing where he is. Perhaps he can help us set up a trap that he no longer has a choice to step into. Finally, from now on, everyone is to take note of any coincidences regarding of the reason they are to be reported to me. Yes, Captain. The Red Glove members replied in unison. Leonard maintained his silence as he turned his head to glance at Dally Simone. He found that the gatekeeper who addressed herself as the spirit medium was similarly silent. Her gaze was dark. At the same time, he heard Pala Zora's slightly aged voice resound in his mind. From the looks of it, I'll be witnessing a play of running and pursuing. What does this old man mean? Is he hinting at something? We just decided to start investigating on Insango's motives, and it's already known by 0-08. Klein looked away and suddenly, not Klein, Leonard looked away and suddenly had an idea. If a person who's already dead was to secretly do a relevant investigation, would it be able to avoid 0-8's notice? After 2 hours of sleep, Klein rubbed his still throbbing head and slowly got out of bed. Following that, he pulled the bell to the side of the door and waited for an attendant to arrive. Before long, a native deliberately dressed in low attire and white shirt and a red vest knocked on his door. Klein twisted the handle and opened the tiny gap in the door. He instructed with a hoarse voice, "Send another lunch sent to the room. I had my meal too early." At this instant, he already looked like a tanned Enzo as a gentleman living in a luxurious room with 2 servants. It was impossible for him to personally instruct the attendant at the door. "Yes, sir, a lunch is sent. Any special requests?" The native attendant took out some paper and pen and began recording as he asked the rather strange Lowanese accent. Klein used an equally odd Lowanese accent. "With braised meat as a main dish, match it with a cup of sparkling wine and ice and lemon. Do I include 2 servant meals?" the native attendant asked, following the usual procedure. Klein was silent for 2 seconds before saying yes. After ending the conversation, he closed the door and quickly set up a ritual belonging to Enzo and Ludwell from above the great fog in the real world. As of creeping hunger and world of the sea, he temporarily left them in the junk pile. One of them was starving and the other could hardly resist the urge to sing. After Klein controlled the marionette to clean up the room, the few attendants came to deliver lunch. Soon the entire room was filled with the sound of a cutlery hitting the plate and soft chewing sounds. After some time, Klein put down his cutlery, picked up his napkin, and wiped his mouth in satisfaction. He leaned backwards and shook his head helplessly. "If this continues, I'll really become fat." The 2 marionettes had already lost the ability to eat, but to conceal the fact that Klein had no choice but to add servant meals with his unwilling to see food go to waste, he could only try and eat as much as he could. Thankfully, I'm a faceless. Klein covered his mouth and he burped before drinking the last bit of sparkling wine. Only at this moment did he feel like he had recovered. He now had the energy to consider various details of his trip to Caldron City. The Marauder pathway is truly terrifying. Just a charm created from the worm of time is able to achieve such incredulous effects. As a king of angels, it's obvious how terrifying Blasphemer Ramon is. Even an Avatar isn't easy to deal with. Thankfully, I didn't put on a brave front. I knew to mimic those experiences, directly fled to the southern continent. The true creator palace is really important to me. He directly got Tail Devourer Ouroboros to rush over. This doesn't have a feeling of traveling across time. The angel on ancient meals are just walking out and standing before me. Thankfully, I was still able to directly end in summoning. Just as Klein thought of this, his expression sank as he discovered the serious problem. Ouroboros is a king of angels from the monster pathway. This also meant that he could directly see the uniqueness about him. He could see the grayish-white fog and see the illusory door formed in spherical light and the transparent and translucent maggots that formed in the spherical light. What does this actually imply? The angel of fate who had survived since the second epoch should know something, and the true creator probably knows more. Could they be able to tell that I'm a master of the mysterious space above the great fog? Regardless, the importance they place on me will rise. Klein clenched his right fist and put it in. Order or Rose Redemption might take. He felt lucky that the Rose Redemption or the Roar Order, they had yet to lock on to any of the Fool's believers. However, during the chaotic battle outside Bayham, when he was still active as Garamond Sparrow, he had thrown out the tinder glove, which had corrupted by the true creator to attempt to attract the Saint of Fate Order. This might very well lead to the crazy adventurer to either enter the suspect list. From the clues extending outward from Garamond Sparrow, there's Admiral of Stars, Vice Admiral Iceberg, Donitz, and Anderson. All of them will be investigated by the Roar Order. I have to warn them. Klein slowly exhaled and stood up, preparing to head above the grey fog. From this point of view, the pursuit of Garamond Sparrow by the military, Church of Storms, Rose School of Thought, and the Numinous Episcopate were all different. The true Creator believers were rather crazy and had a king of angels, a leader who was good at prying into the secrets of fate, active in the real world. This way, it didn't matter if Catlia and company were at sea, making it difficult to be locked on. There was still the risk of them being found. Among them, Vice Admiral Iceberg and Weenan, the Fog Sea's strongest hunter, Anderson, were people Klein was worried too much about. They knew little, nothing that pointed towards the core problem. Nothing much would happen aside from the need to consider whether a bunch of lunatics in the Royal Order would employ extreme methods in the interrogative process. West Balam, Northern State, and the Kookawa City, City ruled by May Sanchez. Donitz, who was chewing on roasted meat, paused suddenly. He heard Mr. Fold pass him with the warning from Garamond Sparrow. Be careful of the Numinous Episcopate. Be careful of the Royal Order, especially the latter. Pay special attention. Also warn Anderson Hood as well as Weena Edwards. Be careful of the Numinous Episcopate. Be careful of the Royal Order. How many has it been? The military, Church of Storms, Church of Evernight, Rose School of Thought. What did Garamond Sparrow do? Why has he offended so many factions? Dog shit. Donnett's expression froze before grimacing. He has no idea the strongest person of the 7 pirate admirals has changed. Opposite him, Anderson put down the knife and used a slice of meat, pricked up his brows, and curiously asked, "Have you recalled something?" Donnett secretly took a deep breath and asked in some deliberation, "Have you heard of the Aurora Order?" He wasn't sure if Anderson knew. After all, the Aurora Order had rather secretive organization that beginning its reputation was later built up in the Lowen Kingdom. Anderson chuckled. "I'm actually more surprised that you do know of them. Did the captain tell you?" Without waiting for Donnet to answer, he combed his short hair with his fingers and continued. "They believe in the Creator as omnipresent. Everything has godhood. They believe that life is nothing but a spiritual journey as long as one is willing to listen to their preachings, understand, discover, and gather the godhood. They will eventually become angels to transcend reality." Such an idea doesn't sound bad, but it's not the main point. The main point is that they believe in the true Creator. Upon hearing that, Donnet couldn't help but jeer. "You know quite a bit, just slightly less than I know." Anderson immediately curled the ends of his mouth and said with a beaming smile, "Of course, I once joined an organization in Intis. They hoped I'd change society, the world, and make a supernatural no longer secret to be out in the open for everyone to see. So, as to become true rulers, they called the Iron and Blood Cross Order, and they also believe in the true Creator." Donnett's expression froze as a cold sweat oozed out of his forehead. Oh my god. I'm really struggling here right now. 1 second. There we go. Not sure why that was so hard for me to do, but it did take me a minute. And that's okay. Glancing at Don's expression, Anderson... Thank you. Did I spell everything else right? Yeah, I did. Nice. Got it right. I wasn't expecting to spell it, like, super correct. Glancing at Don's expression, Anderson continued as though he didn't notice anything. However, the rains appeared to have been eaten by zombies. They were fervent to the point of stupidity. They didn't adhere to the sense of aesthetics. So, after cheating them of their things, I quit. Why is your face a little pale? Are you even sweating? Did you have a heat stroke? As a hunter, shouldn't adapting to the environments be an intrinsic ability? New method of spelling. Pretty much. Donna lifted his right hand and wiped away his sweat. Cursing inwardly, he forced a smile and said, "I've heard that once someone believes in an evil god, it's almost impossible to escape the faith." As he spoke, he raised his chin slightly, wearing a look as though he was mushing over the circumstances of his future death. He didn't cross his mind that Garamond Sparrow had just offended the Aurora Order and was being targeted by the true Creator believers. He also didn't make a connection that he was being in a suspected evil god, the Fool. "Well said," Anderson replied with a smile and didn't have the slightest hint of gloom. "It's not like I have any true faith. Back then, the incantation said that there were lines of modified from the god of knowledge and wisdom. Since they don't really enjoy using their brains, no, they don't really have that. As long as the superficial appeared devout, any random excuse can be used to fool them. Without waiting for Donis to develop this discussion further, he asked, "Why are you suddenly asking about the Aurora Order?" Donis bit down on the roasted meat and slowly chewed and swallowed. After a deliberate pause of 20-30 seconds, he said, "I just recalled something. For some reason, Garamond Sparrow has been identified by the Aurora Order as a high priority elimination target. Oh right, there's also the Numinous Episcopate, and both you and me are known to have relations with them. You want me to be careful against the Aurora Order and the Numinous Episcopate?" Anderson nodded in enlightenment as he chuckled. "You've recently mentioned something similar. Rose School of Thought, Church of Storms, Leonard, low in military. Man, at times I even feel like Garamond Sparrow is more suited to being a hunter than me." Donis could hardly retort as he nodded, heaving in agreement. Anderson thought for a moment when he suddenly changed the topic out of the blue. "What do you plan on doing here in West Balham? Helping Garamond Sparrow or something?" Upon hearing this question, Donis fell silent for a second. He put down the item in his hand and tidied his clothes in an unhurried manner. "Investigate the faith of the different classes of West Balham." This was determined after the discussion with Vice Admiral Iceberg Edwina. In common parlance, it meant investigating the developments of the various secret organizations and factions in West Balham. Of course, this includes some preliminary contact with the local ruling forces and to figure out if they had any desire to purchase firearms. Investigate the faith in the different classes of West Balham. Anderson repeated Donis's words and reflected, raised his right hand to rub his temples, and thought as he had a headache. After the end of the terror gathering, the warning Admiral Stars to take note of Aurora Order's Numinous Episcopate investigations, with the best choice being seeking the Moses Aztec Order. The Moses Aztec Order's help, Klein busily finished the three-party transaction between the world, the moon, and the sun. He received 5,000 pounds in return. After dinner, he bit on an unlit disguised smoke pipe as he read the papers. Then he saw Miss Messenger walk out the void to deliver him a letter. Leonard's. Klein reached out to receive it and noticed that Renette Tinker didn't stay at all. She had rapidly returned to the spirit world. This also made him determine that Leonard Mitchell had already paid the mailing fee. Hence, he took out his other hand and unfolded the letter. Insangwils appeared in East Balham. He suspected to have met Palanki Takabililis from the Numinous Episcopate's official death faction in Sangwell. Klein ruminated over the name as he slowly leaned back into his reclining chair. In the letter, Leonard wished that he could do some investigations in secret to figure out Insangwell's motives, but the problem was that 0-08 had a characteristic of any mention of it will be known. Knowing of it also means being known by it. Besides, it's good at arranging coincidences, making people follow its directions without even realizing it. Under such circumstances, it's very difficult to avoid 0-08's notice while investigating Insangwell. Not only is there no chance of success, it's also easy to expose myself. As Klein thought, he made Enzo walk behind him and began massaging his shoulder. He read Leonard Mitchell's letter again, hoping to find more clues and indistinctive points for investigation from those few words. East Balham, Numinous Episcopate, official death Palanki Takablius. Why is Insangwell looking for them for trying to find aliases from the true mastermind behind the Great Smog of Backlund, the royal family's factions, artificial death. As Klein thought, he suddenly recalled, and there was a matter that no one knew other than himself and Mr. Azig. The Evernight Goddess had preliminarily gained control of the death pathway uniqueness. In other words, artificial death presently. She was usurping, digesting, and wielding the corresponding authority. In other words, the Numinous Episcopate's official death faction target of beliefs was, in a way, the Evernight Goddess. After the authority of the fully transferred in size, they were bound to suffer a purge before slowly merging with the Church of Evernight. Or they might continue their work, making contact with the other Numinous Episcopate factions and other secret factions while unnoticeably cooperating with the Nighthawks. To Klein, this wasn't anything of importance. What was important was that in the ancient texts he found before, it mentioned, to artificially create death, a number of Numinous Episcopate members had to pray into the uniqueness daily, as though it was a true deity. It was an attempt to slowly awaken its sentience and allow it to come to life. Of course, this was only one part of the overall plan, which wasn't critical. They could also possibly Then, could it be possible that the Palanque Tacablius played to artificial death? He had mentioned Insangwell's motives and had sought blessings. But he would probably never imagine that artificial death had already been controlled by the Evernight goddess. Although it hasn't become part of her manifestation, it has already lost its freedom. From this angle, directly setting up the ritual to pray to the motives might allow one to obtain Insangwell's motives. This quite possibly more Klein thought about it, the more creative he was seemingly ridiculous plan would succeed, and in the reason this could become reality. It was because the enemy's leader was their spy. After getting Enzo to stop massaging him, Klein slowly got up and paced about, considering if he should make the attempt, and if so, how. Insangwell is a traitor of the church, he is an insult to the Nighthawks, and there's a chance to wipe him out. The goddess should be very willing to see it happen. She wouldn't mind providing some help, but the goddess is now in a critical stage in seizing the artificial death authority. She will not be able to provide answers for a long period of time, and she can only provide feedback to normal realistic magic. Besides, I also lack the corresponding materials. Also, I've been constantly warning myself and being on guard. I must not fully trust or rely on the goddess. On second thoughts, directly praying to her to obtain revelations might not be so good. I hope to maintain the safe distance amidst his thoughts. Klein felt a little hesitant. He began letting his thoughts wander in a bid to find a more acceptable plan. Suddenly, he had a more ridiculous idea. Directly pray to artificial death. Klein... Why we gotta be doing all that right now? This actually poses no danger, if you say so. This was because artificial death wasn't able to respond to prayers and rituals. If there's any feedback, it meant that they essentially controlled the Evernight goddess. On the other hand, Klein had a feathered product that left behind from the artificial death project. He also had Azic's copper whistle. He didn't need to spend too much time to gather the ingredients needed to set up the ritual revelation. In addition, there's a layer between us. I'm not directly contacting the goddess. Perhaps this might even help her further seize artificial death's authority. Klein consoled himself as he began bathing himself. He first used the sacrificial and bestowment rituals. He brought back the 2 meetings feathers and some full moon essence, night vanilla powder, and other items which he had not used in a while to the real world. Then he modified the sacrificial altar and completed the first part of the preparations. After all, he was essentially praying to the Evernight goddess. He couldn't be bothered to head out to buy ritualistic matters of the death domain. This was essentially the same as other normal ritualistic magic with great familiarity. Klein lit the candles, dripped some essential oils, and drew the symbol for human and concealment on the artificial goatskin. Then, in a thick fog that spread, he pressed Azic's copper whistle over it. Immediately after that, he placed the white feather stained with pale yellow oil stains inside the silver bowl, and his hand burning herbal power. He then watched it curl without any sign of turning back. After exhaling silently, Klein took a step back and chanted in Hermes, "You are the essence of death. You are the lord of the dead. You are the final home of all living beings. I pray for your help." Damn. I pray for you to tell me the motives of Insangwell. Contact the Numinous Episcopate. Just as he said those words, the 3 candlelight grudged as though they brightened significantly, but were tainted with the dark green surroundings that turned cold and creepy. Klein closed his eyes and entered cognition for 30 seconds, feeling uneasy. He walked. Come back. Come back. Come back. Is it back? Is it back? There it is. Nice. Okay. Powder moved without help of any wind. From one word, possessed by an evil spirit requires exorcism. I was like, bro, I'm so close. I'm so close to finishing off where I need to finish off so that tomorrow it's just like, it's a chill. I would have been so sad if it lagged out. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna finish. I know, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, we'll do 4 more chapters and then I'll be done. Did David bet that I wouldn't be able to finish it? I'm assuming. I'm assuming David made a bet that I would not be able to finish it. The goddess really replied upon seeing the words formed by the powder. Klein's first reaction had nothing to do with the content and said he was shocked that this seemingly ridiculous thing had happened. Although he had already mentally prepared and he had believed that the chances of I kind of figured. Chances of success was rather high, he still felt conflicting emotions. It took him almost a minute to accept it. Pretty much. After a while, Klein exhaled slowly, raising his right hand and tapped the chest 4 times clockwise manner, praised the lady. Then he ended the ritual, forcing himself to focus his attentions on the relative itself. No, nobody has faith in me. No one. Possessed by an evil spirit requires exorcism. Insangwell actually got possessed by an evil spirit. He had gone from Sequence 9 to Sequence 5 of the Death Pathway. The godhood he obtained in the critical stage is also Sequence 4 Night Watcher of the Evernight Pathway, one that is only good at dealing with spirit body type creatures. Evil spirits, wraiths, should be afraid of him, so why would he end up getting possessed? That's unless the evil spirit is extremely high or at its core is very special. Unfortunately, I've only met one evil spirit in the truest sense of the word. It's that ancient evil spirit sealed in the underground ruins of Alista Tudor. I know little about such monsters, so it's difficult for me to grasp the details. I can write to ask Miss Sharon. I can also get Little Son to find out more, that Shepherd Elder Lovia had grazed an evil spirit. Sova does, yeah. You know what? Stan believes in me. Stan believes in me sometimes. Sometimes he doesn't, but sometimes he does. It's no wonder Insangwell is trying to meet an demigod in the Numinous Episcopate. When it comes to exorcising evil spirits, aside from the Church of the Evernight and the Church of the Eternal Blazing Sun, the best would probably be the Numinous Episcopate. There's probably a Church of the God of Combat as well. Neighboring pathways often have similar traits. There's also one point that can be gleaned from this. Insangwell doesn't wish for his possessed state to be known by the royal family faction of the Demoness sect, who are in cahoots with him. Otherwise, there's no need for him to come all the way to the southern continent. The two factions existed before the Fourth Epoch. They have a long legacy. It's quite unlikely that they don't have a sealed artifact and can remove the exorcist evil spirit. Even if they can't find one, getting the Numinous sect to contact the Numinous Episcopate is definitely safer and more convert than getting Insangwell to make the trip himself. As his thoughts raced, Klein unfolded the piece of paper and wrote, "The intel you've provided me made me connect certain clues from the past, what I've previously gathered, and due to the particular great existence help, this point to a clear conclusion. Insangwell is possessed by an evil spirit, and he's seeking the Numinous Episcopate's help. Just based on these facts alone, we can make several useful judgments. Insangwell will often manifest inconsistently in his words and actions. When he does often divide from a normal path, doing something will feel like an absolute impossibility for him to do, and it will also find outcome incomprehensible. Before this problem is resolved, he will not stop having contact with the Numinous Episcopate. It might even become more frequent. Making investigations based on this might allow us to catch Insangwell by the tail. However, I believe that we still wouldn't be able to lock onto him. The creation of the coincidences from the Grade 0 sealed artifact is insurmountable. Upon writing this, Klein couldn't help but recall his direct encounter with Insangwell. His own investigations didn't directly point to him, but it caused their ploy to nearly fail. Hence, Insangwell personally took... Come back, please. Please come back. Baby, come back. You know you're all I need. His own investigation didn't directly point to him, but it caused the ploy of nearly fail. Hence, Insangwell personally took action, sending a meteorite falling from the sky. Could it have been an overreaction? I don't know. In an attempt to kill Sherlock Moriarty so as to obtain the entire clues, he ultimately received Mr. Azek's help by escaping the dire situation, forcing Insangwell to step into the limelight and expose himself. Back then, if Mr. Azek had recovered from his former strength, Insangwell might have already been dead. But to replicate such a situation and force him to appear before me is extremely difficult. After all, back then, not only was there Mr. Azek in the Death Console, I also used the Grey Fog and foil of the coincidences. There was also Trissy Cheek and the ring, which was expected to be a grade sealed artifact. Without her suddenly escaping, Insangwell wouldn't have been forced to personally take action. Klein deliberated as he wrote, "If we can figure out the origins of the preliminary goal of this evil spirit, there might be a chance of the situation having a favorable change." After writing the matter regarding Insangwell, Klein's heart stirred. Just as he was about to mention something else, he stopped his pen after writing a few first letters. He raised his left hand and pinched his cheek. He appeared to be in a serious dilemma and seemed to be a little embarrassed. After muttering silently a few times, Klein finally smoothly wrote to rest. "Even without the Grade 0 sealed artifact help, Insangwell was an enemy you and I are unable to face head on. We need to make plenty of preparations." Thank you, Alma. If you can provide me with some worms of time, I can use them to create high-level charms and can deal with demigods. It's called a fate siphon charm. I can swap the fate of yours and the target of a short period of time. Putting down his fountain pen, Klein didn't take a second as he looked, quickly folded the letter, and seriously sealed it in an envelope. He then took out an adventurer's harmonica and gold coin before summoning Miss Messenger. He got her to take away the reply letter to Leonard Mitchell, but this time it was addressed to 7 Pinster Street. Instead, it was directly sent to Leonard's present address, with Leonard having just written the letter. Klein didn't believe that it moved out of Renette Tinker's direct range. After doing all this, Klein heaved a sigh of relief as he shook his head slightly. Requesting the help of others is really a difficult task. It's even more so from someone as thin-skinned as me. He quickly attracted his attention to once again modify Enzo and Ludwell's appearance. After all, they had been seen by Angel of Fate Ouroboros during the exploration of the Caldron City. During this process, Klein suddenly had an idea. He planned on sending them above the Great Fog and using the Spirit World Plunderer's true body soul form as a disguise. The Spirit World Plunderer could make its soul avatars take the form of the true soul body, and it could also get them to disguise themselves as other spirit world creatures. The bionic ingredients it left behind must have such abilities. However, it would be difficult to use it with the poor effects of huge negative side effects. However, this wasn't a problem for Klein, who possessed the mysterious base above the Great Fog. After all, he didn't plan on using the bionic ingredients for actual combat. Doing some changes to his marionette didn't require too many smooth operations and great effect furthermore. This could be slowly adjusted. As for the negative effects that came from the godhood, it wasn't something to consider. It wasn't obedient when it left in the junk pile. After a series of tasks, Klein sat in the high back chair of the fool, and his hand was on the palm-sized Spirit World Plunderer, true body soul. Without looking down and looking at the detail, he extended his spirituality bit by bit onto it. There wasn't much change in the scenery before him. It was still illusory and dense in black spirit body threads. However, when he tried to control them, he discovered that not only he could control the marionette spirit body threads, but he could also let the spirit body threads extend out and penetrate into their bodies. When both sides established such a two-way connection, Klein suddenly felt that he had a marionette was one of his Beyonders powers could be enhanced on the other party through the spirit body threads, including his trick for changing his appearance and body. Amidst this slow and difficult process, Klein felt rather groggy as he felt his emotions turning into a mess. He began showing signs of losing control. This was an inevitable outcome for having his spirituality make direct contact with the godhood. He hurriedly diverted some attention and stirred some of the powers of the mysterious space above the Great Fog, and he resorted his condition back to the normal state. After doing the torment, Klein finished his attempt. Enzo had transformed into the southern continent native that looked like it came from the plantation. Ludwell had mixed blood and feel in him. His ghastly face was no longer more bone than flesh. Instead, it was a plumpness to it. It had a silver mask, and it had the effect of placing the soul. There was no way of removing it to the time being. All Klein could do was let it sink into Ludwell's chest. This still had a certain level of effect, but it was interfering with the wearer on his face. He could barely maintain the status quo. Unfortunately, there's no way to change the mask into other types of accessories, otherwise it would have saved me quite a bit of trouble. As Klein rushed to throw the Spirit World Plunderer's true body soul back into the junk pile, he rubbed his temples and allowed his thoughts to wander. Right, I still have the Soul Assurer's bionic characteristic here that can be made into a mystical item and replace the mask. No, I've always wanted to plan on returning that to the church. I'll mail it to him when Leonard replies. After the discomfort slowly subsided, Klein took out his golden pocket watch and opened it to check the time. Following that, he summoned the paper figurine and stirred some powers in the mysterious space above the Great Fog. He then threw both the specialty labeled points of light. At the point of light resplended the fool's only believers at present, Donitz. From Klein's point of view, Admiral Star's Catlia and the Mosaic Aztec Order back here. Vice Admiral Iceberg Edwino was the Church of Knowledge and Wisdom. Anderson Hood didn't know much about Garamond Sparrow, and being good at identifying the situation he was in, he wasn't one to put on a brave front. Therefore, when the Royal Order did an investigation, it was unlikely that they would be in grave danger. Donitz was the only exception. With him being in Westbound and not able to return to the Golden Dream anytime soon, his lacking strength, and him often wearing the boxing glove that made him act rashly, it was truly worrisome. Due to the fact Mr. Fool had to work a little harder, he gave Donitz a paper angel embrace every day at the fixed time so as to disrupt any divination and prophecies about him. Leonard never expected Klein Moretti to reply that quickly. With some level of incredulity, he opened the envelope and read the corresponding content. Due to the practically good existence help, he referring to the Fool. Indeed, Klein's investigations into Insangwell was already reached a significant depth. He had already figured out the truth in that moment and the mention of the numinous episcopate, processed by an evil spirit. How did it end up being possessed by an evil spirit? How do we make use of this? Worms of time, this. Klein quickly scanned through the last part of the letter and the expression suddenly became complicated. In his mind, Palazoris maintained silence without saying a word. Yeah. There we go. 2 more chapters. 2 more. After a while, Leonard cleared his throat and wrote a smile, and realizing it, he said with a suppressed voice, "Old man, Klein's, this suggestion seems pretty good. It's very, very viable. The effect should be quite substantial. Why don't you consider it? Didn't you mention that you would do your best to help me exact revenge? I thought Worms of Time could only be used to avatars and act as support." He subconsciously drowned out while Palazoris remained silent the entire time. Only after a while did he sigh lightly and say, "I can only give you a maximum of 2 Worms of Time." Without waiting for Leonard to say a word, he added, "To exact revenge on a demigod who wields a grade 0 sealed artifact, the most important thing is you still your own level and strength. Otherwise, you won't have a chance of using it, even if you're high level charm." Leonard wiped away his smile and nodded seriously. "I'll do my best to digest my potion. If you finish digesting it and fail to accumulate enough contribution points, I'll help you seek out the Beyonder ingredients needed for Spirit Warlock." As for only having 2 Worms of Time, he wasn't disappointed at all. He was already in a bonus, just getting one of the great boon. Having two meant that he and Klein could split it each of them, having one fate siphon charm. After expressing his attitude, he asked in puzzlement, "Old man, do you think Klein has already used the previous Worm of Time charm?" He remembered very clearly that back when they were figuring out who Emlyn White was supporting, the old man weird. The old man had parasitized Tinder in the Worm of Time. Later, it lost contact and failed to be of any use. Now, its retrospection, just Emlyn White's and Sherlock Moriarty's close relationship made it easy for him to figure out the truth. The Worm of Time had been emanating from the upper echelons of the secret organization, or even the Fool himself. Furthermore, there was a high chance that it had been bestowed to Klein. Otherwise, the former colleague would have known the existence of the Worm of Time. Palazoris immediately scoffed. If he hasn't already used it and seen its effects, why would he raise the issue and ask for more? All right, I need to separate the Worms of Time. This will make me fall asleep for at least 2 weeks. If you have any questions, find someone to ask them by yourself. With that said, not giving Leonard a chance to raise further questions, he scattered his spirituality and created a blob of light hung high inside Leonard's mind, as though he didn't wish to speak. Leonard instinctively responded as to chuckle triumphantly. He focused his attention back on the letter from Klein Moretti and carefully read it again. Possessed by an evil spirit, the origins of the preliminary goals of the evil spirit. I don't know how much evil spirits, nothing comes from his mind. After a few minutes of thought, Klein took out a matchbox and burned the letter. Then he left the room which the local night talks had assigned him. At the last minute, he came to the room diagonally opposite him and knocked on the door. Before long, Dally, who hadn't removed her blue eyeshadow and blush, opened the door and pricked up her eyebrows. When did a sleepless have the courage to knock on the lady's door at a time highly associated with bed? I have some questions I'd like to consult you with. Return of Clennard. Leonard obviously didn't dare respond to Dally's comment, as he immediately expressed the reason why he was here. Dally sized him up in a chuckle. "I'm not responsible for counseling minors." As she spoke, she made a way and allowed Leonard to enter her room. Without daring to let his eyes wander, he casually pulled a round stool and sat on it. He then went straight to the point. "Ma'am, I'd like to know more about evil spirits. You're sequence 5 of the death pathway. You have higher clearance than me. You should know quite a lot." "Why are you asking me this?" Dally propped herself with her hands on the edge of the table behind her. Without waiting for him to reply, she continued, "Most evil spirits are the result of death high sequence beyonders. A small number of them are race who break through various reactions via using various opportunities. The first situation is more common. After high sequence beyonders consume a potion of obtain godhood, their soul body would have experienced a mutation. It would be a mutation at their core. This allows their soul body to remain clear even in death, with their powers dispersed. There will be a certain level of divinity to it, making them rather terrifying. The second situation isn't different on a fundamental level. Normally speaking, evil spirits will weaken with their time and passage until they completely dissipate. However, they can also assimilate into regions that were born, making the spirit world and even the underworld fuse with it. They then extract power from them, maintain their existence. Therefore, many evil spirits have their own territory and active range. It's not that they don't wish to leave, but they can't. The only exception is when they accumulate sufficient power, allowing their existence to experience a fundamental change. Leonard habitually crossed his right leg over his left and pressed it in thought. Can evil spirits leave their territory by possessing a person? Yes, but ordinary humans and most beyonders are unable to withstand the extraction effect the evil spirit have on their bodies. They will quickly lose their spirituality and their body temperature will be unable to last long. As Allie spoke, she raised her hand and pointed to herself. The best method is to rely on beyonders of the death pathway, of course. It has to be at least a sequence 5, because of gatekeeper. We will have our own dead spirit prison in our body. It can be called a miniature underworld. It can provide an evil spirit with an adequate environment for the existence. Once you become a spirit warlock, you also have similar powers. However, it will be more about sealing and sleeping than an internal underworld. Those natural spirits and wraiths are truly troublesome when it comes in and out. In Zangwill, Sequence 5 is Gatekeeper. It's no wonder that the evil spirit can possess him for a long period of time. Or could it be that he failed in an attempt to enslave an evil spirit? Leonard's thoughts opened up as he immediately made connections. He deliberated for a few seconds before asking, what sort of needs does an evil spirit have? Needs? Singing, dancing, poetry, men, women, the sea of stars? Dally returned to the question amused. Leonard realized that his usage of words was problematic as he awkwardly ruffled his hair. I mean, what desire will an evil spirit have? That depends on what it desired while it was alive. Typically speaking, the remnant spirit will inherit the original obsession without being able to balance it rationally. If it were you, the evil spirit might attempt to write poems, imprison a group of spectators, or seek acknowledgement, or it will do things in an ostentatious manner, like a protagonist of a play. Dally joked. However, regardless of what it was while it was alive, as long as you become an evil spirit, they commonly desire 2 things. What are they? Leonard turned attentive. Dally shot him a glance and said, first, it's to feed on the souls of living creatures. This can pleasure them, and innate pleasure and stems from the need to maintain their existence. In addition, a large number of souls will allow them to escape the restriction of their territory and active range. It will replace the power provided by the spirit world and underworld. Second is to seek out beyonder ingredients from their pathway. While they were alive, through this, they could create another foundation. At a certain stage, the evil spirit will no longer need to draw on the powers of the spirit world and the underworld. They will no longer be restricted by the territories or active range. In a sense, they would have transformed into a special spirit world creature. Leonard seemed to realize something as he thought. This also means that evil spirits can consume sequence potions. No, sequence potions are created for human consumption. They reduce the risk of losing control to many supernatural creatures. There's no need to do so. They can directly consume the ingredient raw. It's especially so for evil spirits. Their obsession, cruelty, ferocity, and penchant for souls make them half crazy to begin with. There's no need to regulate it from the source. Furthermore, they need spirit bodies, so the method of consumption is directly accommodation from slow digestion. Dally corrected Leonard's point. This to the evil spirit is possession in Zangwill. Whenever he has the upper hand, it will control the body and seek out beyond ingredients of its pathway while it was alive. Leonard was first surprised before he had an idea. He said to the pleasant surprise, Thank you for answering my questions. With that said, he hesitated for a few seconds and asked for some deliberation. Ma'am, I believe we shouldn't just figure out the motives behind Zangwill's meeting with the numinous Episcopate demigod, but we also need to track his trajectory since Backland and East Balam. We need to know what he did midway, what items he found, what might lead us to effective clues. Dally suddenly fell still before she pricked up her brows and said, Well said, but what does this have to do with evil spirits? Nothing. I raised the question so as to make preparations because I believe that since we are investigating the numinous Episcopate, we might encounter evil spirits. The latter half was a suggestion I wished to make after the break. I just wished to talk to you about it beforehand. Leonard's mind raced as he slowed down his speech and fabricated the excuse on the spot. Dally listened in silence and chuckled. If you actually work so hard on fabricating stories in front of the other girls, you'll no longer be single with those looks of yours. Unfortunately, I'm not the clueless girl. All right, there's no need to explain further. Leave. Leonard stood up lamely without trying to emphasize his point. He then walked towards the door. Just as he gripped his handle, Dally's slightly ethereal voice sounded behind him. I don't know what secret you're hiding, nor do I know what you know. None of that matters. But when it comes to Zangwill, if you need any help or aid, you can find me. Leonard paused for 2 seconds and his mouth quivered. Oh, no. He then pulled open the door and walked out. City of Silver, Derek Bird had received an order to join the expedition team, leading with Chief Colin Iliad. Their target was no city. It was a northern city ruins where the shapeshifter and other terrifying creatures lived. Oh my god, that's so sad. Oh my god, we got another number one. I swear have we not had this exact chapter number before? Or was it 2 plus 2 is greater than 4? No, it was 1 plus 1 is greater than 2. We have had this exact chapter title before. I swear we have. Yeah, so this is just the second title chapter that we've had of this. I'm trying to remember what happened in the title. I'm trying to remember what happened in the chapter last time we had this. And now I'm a little concerned. Ever since the information about the suspected Bizarro Bane shapeshifter was given to Mr. World, Derek constantly believed that the latter might one day entrust him with a mission for the corresponding ingredients. However, his strength was lacking. Even if his friends, it was impossible for him to complete the hunt. Furthermore, such expeditions need to go through the 6-member council, private teams that were unable to wander too far within the City of Silver. Therefore, he could do was temporarily suppress it deep down. From time to time, it was used the motive to advance quicker. To his surprise, it didn't take long for the expedition team to head to Noise City was set up. Leading the team was Chief Colin Iliad. Combining his previous discussion with Mr. Hangman, Miss Justice, and company in the recent terror gathering, Derek quickly came to the theory. During the exploration of the former city mausoleum, the Fool had provided a certain level of help to the present chief, allowing him to foil the fallen creator's ploy, and successfully resolve the certain matters, hence noticing the search for the information. The demon hunter had decided to hunt the shapeshifter and pleased to this day. This was necessary way of curry favor. This is also kind of equivalent exchange. The hangman's words resounded in Derek's mind. It made him no longer puzzled over the matter, so was taking opportunity before he set out the prayer before Mr. Fool requested him to inform Mr. World of the expeditions. He quickly received the response and heard Mr. World say, "If the hunting of the Bizarro Bane is difficult or dangerous, the requirement can be lowered. Attempt to extract its blood. As long as you obtain it, I'll trade it for whatever the price of the light beyond a characteristic is." The priest of the light beyond a characteristic. Mr. World already has the light beyond a characteristic, or it could be that he is locked onto a target and will quickly be able to obtain it. With the chief's strength and the teamwork of the expedition team, there's a high chance of success if it's just extracting the blood. Derek felt relieved as he held Thunder God's roar and left his residence, heading straight for the training field. Just as he arrived in the direction, he saw Chief Colin Iliad, and the latter carried 2 swords of his back. He was standing tall and staid, leaving anyone who saw him at ease. And beside the demon hunter was another person. He was wearing a black robe with the purple patterns, and she had long hair, curly silver-gray hair, Shepherd Lovia. Lovia was apparently participating. Bye, Merlin. Have a good time. Participating in the expedition turned her head, and pale gray eyes reflected Derek Berg's figure. However, they were only calm in her eyes. Derek felt a baffling sense of alarm as he involuntarily slowed down his pace. Eastbound in the middle of the great fog. Klein deliberately approved of the City of Silver chief organization and expedition to Noise City. He informed Little Sun that there was no need to take risks. All he needed was some blood and a target for completion of the mission. When that time came, he could smear the blood over Grozel's travel, bringing all the gear and challenge before Bizarro Bane on the tough, thus obtaining the Beyonder ingredients he needed. Klein had also considered the possibility of whether Grozel's travel's ability to swallow people into the book world was actually seen as uniqueness of the fourth sacred land of the gods. He had also come up with the solution that bestow Little Sun with Grozel's travels. After achieving this goal, he could get Little Sun to sacrifice it back. In addition, he wasn't worried about the Bizarro Bane lacking blood because of the nature of the spirit world creatures. This was because the Bizarro Bane potion formula clearly wrote, supplementary ingredient 200 milliliters Bizarro Bane's blood. There was always more solution for the problem. Klein muttered in satisfaction before returning to the real world. Before sleeping, he received a reply from Leonard Mitchell. It mentioned that it would take another day for the Worm of Time. He described the monsters known as evil spirits in details. Another day before it can be provided, and there will be 2 of them. The Grandpa in Leonard's body has quite a good attitude, unable to leave the territory, limited in active range. Their common trait is to devour the souls of living creatures and the desire Beyonder ingredients from the pathway when they are still alive. This also means that the evil spirit will seek out corresponding ingredients and Beyonder characteristic when it wields control over Insangwell's body. This is indeed a direction for investigation. Klein held the letter and read it, though. Suddenly he recalled something. Back when the encounter in Zangwell on the Waypoint Island, the Berserk Sea, the latter had been pursued by the powerful demigod in the Hunter pathway. Could it be a result of the evil spirit? I previously imagined that Insangwell had received a commission by some faction of the royal family, and it's something that targeted Intis Republic, only to have a mistake happen, thus exposing himself and getting pursued by the powerhouse. From the looks of it, there might be another possibility that evil spirits desire the Beyonder characteristic of the Hunter pathway, and when it could be controlled in Sangwell's body, it attempted to hunt Beyonders of the same pathway. This might have succeeded or failed. In short, the result was that he was targeted by the powerful demigods of the Hunter pathway. He pursued him in the entire journey and institution of the Hunter. The more Klein thought about it, the more convinced he was that the theory was close to relative. This was the only way to explain why Insangwell, who wielded 0-08, was discovered. At that moment, Enzo and Ludwell were kneeling down and massaging Klein's legs. I can guess that it's an evil spirit in the Hunter pathway for now. I'll later write back to Leonard and get him to steer the investigations in this direction. The fellow's acting isn't great, nor does it have a psychological experience. I wonder if he will end up exposing himself. Perhaps he will explain it away with some non-existent informant. Hunter pathway evil spirit, Hunter pathway evil spirit. Klein's eyes suddenly widened as he suddenly sat up, leaving his two marionettes at a loss. There wasn't many evil spirits he knew, and he had only seen one. However, that one happened to be from the Hunter pathway. It was Red Angel Medici's main body, and it combined with the remnant psyches of two Sequence 1 angels from the Sauron and Enhorn families. When it came to the Hunter pathway, there was no evil spirit that was even higher level. There was, unless the Blood Emperor Lister Tudor had its psyche remaining. Interesting. Okay. Where was I? No. I lost where I was. Crying. Oh, previously Insangwell was in Backland, and the evil spirit, who I'm not sure if I should call Medici, was also in Backland. Later, the evil spirit escaped the seal, and its whereabouts are unknown. As for Insangwell, he suffered from the... Interesting. So I'm assuming went inside Insangwell. Possibly, maybe. That's what I'm wondering. As for Insangwell, he suffered from the possession of an evil spirit. Both sides are evil spirits from the Hunter pathway. This could be the one possessing Insangwell and the Red Angel spirit. Klein frowned bit by bit, almost finding his theories unbelievable. However, he found it possible. Bye. Thanks for hanging out. Have a wonderful rest of your night. As his thoughts raced, he found another indirect piece of evidence. The unique trait of 0-08 is that once you know it, it will also know you. And the King of Angels who survived from the Second Epoch, Red Angel Medici, probably knows all kinds of details about 0-08. In other words, as long as the evil spirit attempted to recall anything related to 0-08, 0-08 would know of it and establish a connection. There was a sentence. Pleasure working with you. No way. But the problem lies in the fact that I previously suspected the evil spirit to have one Sequence 1 characteristic. There's no need to seek any more of it. Could it be that it has digested it? Klein rubbed his temples as his head ached. He stood up entering the bathroom and took 4 steps counterclockwise and headed above the grey fog. Just as he sat down, he conjured the pen and paper and wrote a following divination statement. The one possessing Insangwell is the evil spirit back in the underground ruins of Alista Tudor. He scrutinized each word for a few seconds before taking off the topaz pendant on his left wrist and planned to use spiral dowsing rod and divination. 3 pages left in this chapter, and then 1 more chapter, and then we're done. This time, the scene he saw when he opened his eyes was a topaz pendant stood still. This meant that the divination had failed. The level is too high, and there is 0-08. Right, the evil spirit also carried the red priest card and his anti-divination and anti-prophecy. Also high quantum properties. It's no wonder I failed with the 3 combined. This is also an indirect confirmation. Klein analyzed the reason and considered what other ways he could make the verification. He tapped his fingers on the edge of the long bronze table and silently muttered to himself, apart from getting Leonard to lead the Red Gloves to do an investigation, I should do something as well. Assuming that the one possessing Insangwell was really the Red Angel evil spirit, will it seek out Beyonder ingredients from the Hunter pathway when it gains control of the body? Intis capital, Trier, Faceac capital, St. Millum, or would it solely rely on the card of blasphemy activation and seal it in order to use the law of Beyonder characteristics? Convergence to attract Beyonders to flying like moths, flying like fire. Wait, it mentioned before that the descendants of the Medici family are the Bansi Harbor, although it has already been destroyed and there might still be someone buried there. Also, the evil spirit of the 3 angels from Remnant Spirit has a very potent proactive trait. This matches Leonard's description of the evil spirits in the letter. It might have deliberately left something in Bansi. With this in mind, Klein immediately conjured the World Gammon Sparrow's figure and requested the hangman to head to Bansi once more to do more thorough investigation. After doing that, Klein began contemplating. Once he confirmed that Insangwal had the Red Angel evil spirit in him, he wondered if he could use the law of beyond a characteristic conversion as a starting point, enticing Insangwal to trap. He set up using the corresponding ingredients. Hunter pathway. Amidst his thoughts, Klein suddenly recalled 2 hunters who were loitering in West Balam. He frowned slightly and began analyzing. Although East Balam and West Balam were vast territories, and the distance between the city that Insangwal made his last appearance in the northern state is very great, it will probably take nearly half a month to travel. Even as a demigod, since he doesn't have teleport in the territory, Donitz and Anderson will not suddenly encounter the Red Angel evil spirit because the law of convergence also, their sequences are too low. But I can't be too sure. West Balam, northern states, Kokowa City. Donut shot a glance at Anderson and blurted out, I'm going to do some investigations. Why are you following me? Logically speaking, shouldn't you head back to the Fog Sea with Baron's Harbor? Last chapter. Oh my god, so much has happened in these chapters too. Goddamn. That's me. Okay. Bro, the fact that I only have to do 10 chapters tomorrow. I told you, I'm gonna finish it. And you guys are like, no, you're not. And I'm like, yeah, I am. Anderson, who was enjoying a piece of cream cassava bread, looked at Donut seemingly in thought. He said, I'm not sure why, but I don't wish to leave West Balam. Since I'm here, I'm a treasure hunter. How can I return empty-handed? As an extensive forest... Also, yeah, I also found out that David specifically bet 50 push-ups against me that I wasn't going to be able to finish. Fuck you, David. I'm going to finish now. So, there you go. I said I was going to do it. I did it. I'm not sure why, but I don't wish to leave West Balam. Since I'm here as a treasure hunter, how can I return empty-handed? In the extent... Oh! Speak of the devil and he shall appear. David, look what chapter we're on. Look who's gonna be doing 50 push-ups here, David. With that, cunty little bottom back arch you got. Adonis sipped his chin and gussed down the remaining guander. This is a beverage made from fruit native to West Balam. It was orange-yellow in color and sweetness amidst the sourness. It was good in quenching thirst and revealing heat. It also had some caffeine that allowed people to combat fatigue and stay awake. Putting down the cup and picking up the napkin to wipe his mouth, Donald scoffed and I keep feeling as though you're up to something. I also hope this is the case, Anderson said with an unconcerned smile. He matched breakfast with coffee. In East and West Balam, there were many excellent coffee-bearing lands. They were just slightly less famous than Fainer Potter Highland coffee and Southern Continent Highland coffee. The star highlight was the nearby Paz Valley Fairmo coffee. Without waiting for Donut's reply, Anderson said with a smile, actually, isn't this good? I'm proving you with free protection, and you're my interpreter. Every benefit out of this arrangement. Recalling that he was only sequence 7 and wanted to be all kinds of factions, Donitz had a baffling feeling that Anderson's words made sense. He coughed slightly and said, but there will be a certain time when I'll get you to stay away. If you say please, then there's no problem, Anderson said in a relaxed manner. Donitz immediately hooded himself and walked towards the hotel's exit in preparation to begin today's investigation. Midway, he suddenly said, have you seen such an experience, often dreaming of an angel's descent wrapping you in layers of wings? No, it's not only in dream. I occasionally have that same illusion every time I'm awake. Anderson's glance was the boxing of Donna's glove and wearing. After pondering a few seconds, he said with a smile, are you a believer of some secret existence, or have you made connection with some ancient item? Donna's expression froze as he forced a smile. If it were as simple as you said, I would have long guessed the reason. As he spoke, he brushed shoulders with 3 men who came in before walking out. Anderson habitually sized up the passers-by and confirmed his surroundings. Therefore, he glanced with the 3 men and realized that they were the masters and 2 servants. The master was tall and his skin was brown. It's Klein. Brown in his soft facial features as though his parents from Balam and Loam. He wore an attire of a style of northern continent and top silk hat, black formal suit and golden inlaid cane. The two servants were standard local and seemed to come from plantations. They were helping their master hold the cane and leather suitcase. One of them was mixed blood with a fleshy face and baggy clothes. On the other waist was a rapier, as though he was also playing the role of a bodyguard. Unconcerned, Anderson retracted his gaze and followed Donitz onto the street. He pointed at a different style coffins that were horse-drawn and manually lifted than the piqued interest. Want to try one of those? It's very interesting. Once you get used to it, you will realize that the death isn't something to be afraid of. Perhaps you might be able to open the lid at some point and in time stand up. Donitz looked at the strange transportation tool through the corner of his eyes as he didn't hesitate to shake his head. As a pirate, I more or less believe that the Lord of Storms certain things are taboo, and one of them is to stay away from coffins. I'm different. I don't have any taboos. Anderson casually took out a few Delexi and brought a few sets of newspapers from the paperboy on the street. I'll keep my comments for the end. It had to be said that when it came to the paperboys, the various cities in the southern continent were inferior to the northern continent. After all, manual labor was cheaper and there were many children who needed to supplement their family's income. As Donitz walked to the end of the street in search of the carriage meet for foreigners, he took a copy of the newspaper from Anderson and quickly browsed through it. Suddenly he noticed a piece of newspapers. Infamous pirate who called himself Admiral Hal Ludwell had been killed by the crazy adventurer Gammon Sparrow. His Black Tulip and pirate crew had been taken over by Muriel Lee, who claimed to be the Death's envoy. Donit's mouth turned slightly agape, and he was hardly able to close it. He finally understood why Gammon Sparrow wanted him to be careful of the numinous episcopate. The lunatic had actually killed the strongest 7 pirate admirals, Ludwell. About 10 seconds later, Donitz handed the newspaper to Anderson with a dazed expression. "Take a look at this." Anderson received the newspaper with a smile and quickly scanned through it. After a brief silence, he whistled and chuckled. This fellow likely has a new nickname, Pirate Admiral Nemesis. Donitz didn't dare to nod at the Poggins. He said, "Back when I first met him, although I had already found him terrifying, I never expected him to be this terrifying." At that moment, he recalled the early attempts of recruiting Gammon Sparrow as a sailor of the Golden Dream. And while he left the hotel, Klein had already taken up the residence of the luxurious room. He was standing by the window, watching 2 hunters who were being flippant while walking. Rubbing the cufflink on their sleeve, he unfolded the letter and wrote, "I suspect that the evil spirit is possessing and Sangwell is from the hunter pathway. You can carry out more investigations in this regard. Along with this letter is a soul assures beyond a characteristic. It comes from the pitiful person who was grazed. I liberated him and promised to return his characteristic to the Church of Evernight." In East Balham, having just prepared to join the morning meeting, Leonard suddenly saw the angel messenger who wielded 4 blonde, red-eyed head appear before him. Already used to this, he received the letter and opened it. He gave it a glance, and he was surprised to see that the item had resplendent in the night sky. "This is..." Leonard had an inkling to what the item was. He hurriedly unfolded the letter and read it. 20 seconds later, he slowly sighed and silently said, in expectant, "Is the beyond a characteristic. Klein is still very friendly to the Church of the Nighthawks." He was rather delighted as he took out the transparent dead ringed worm and placed it on the envelope. He then summoned Gammon Sparrow's messenger, handed it to her, and paid that 1 gold coin. After doing this, Leonard loosened the top buttons of his shirt, walked out of the room, and headed underground. On the way, he encountered Dally Simone. She dressed as a spirit medium. Dally leaned forward and asked very normally, "Any new clues?" "It's suspected to be an evil spirit of the hunter pathway." Leonard fell silent for a few seconds before he decided against concealing the matter. Dally nodded indiscernibly and said after some thought, "Then it might have an instinct to being provocative. It will provocatively leave clues for us. Of course, this might also contain some level of misdirection to it." Knock, knock, knock. Someone knocked on the captain's cabin of the Blue Avenger. "Come on in." Alger put down the brass sextant and his hand, and he said in a deep voice. A sailor opened the door and looked back. With an urging of his companions, he hesitantly entered the room and struck his left breast with the right fist and bowed. "Holy Lord of Storms." After Alger did the same response, he forced a smile and said, "Captain, many pirates of the sailors of the merchant ships have been recently saying that they found valuable items in the ruins of Bancy Harbor. There was even gold. Why don't we have any particular information mission recently? So everyone is wondering if we should make another trip to Bancy. Such a bustling harbor, even if it has been searched for numerous times, it should still have plenty of things left." Alger listened with a deadpan expression. Even after a few seconds of thought, he said, "I can understand your feelings. Let's do this. Let's head to the direction of Bancy Harbor, but do not set a destination. If nothing happens midway, we will stay there for a day." "Aye, aye, Captain." The sailor excitedly clenched their right fist and struck their left breast again. "May the storm be with you." "May the storm be with you." Alger watched as his subordinate left to close the door. I don't know why I gave Alger such a sweet voice there. Then, as though nothing had happened, he poured himself a cup of Lanty proof without any joy or anger as he sipped it slowly. Whenever he had just happened within his expressions, this was because his news of finding items of the value in Banty Harbor ruins was something he had spread with disgust. As a captain of the Church of Storms, he had constantly monitored by his sailors, having been the Banshee once. Mentoring it again made it suspicious. Therefore, Alger decided on getting the crew to make the request themselves. That way, even if they discovered anything or encountered something at Banshee Harbor, no one would suspect him, the captain. To the sailors, especially sailors who just had spent all their money in Bayham, any news of rumors with sufficient allure would stir the hearts of most. Alger knew this very well. In addition to the Blue Avenger had stayed in Bayham for too long, if he hadn't set sail, it would also be suspicious. As for monitoring Artisan Cleve, it was naturally left to the Hermit Catlia. Due to the investigations of the Roar Order, this pirate admiral and the future had recently been hanging out at the Roar Archipelago. It was said that it was important based on the Moses Aztec Order. After drinking the liquid, Alger put down his cup and looked out the undulating waves and silently said in a word, Banshee. Considering how it was late June and while Septon's birthday was still unclear, Klein did some reorganization before heading above the Great Fog to bring the radio transceiver back to the real world. He also warned himself that he could only ask a maximum of 2 questions. In the room, that suddenly turned gloomy and cold, the unmannered transceiver began producing clicking voices. Chapter 936. Don't want to miss out. Perfect. So we're going to stop there. Thanks so much for joining. As always, super appreciate you guys. Tomorrow is going to be the ending of Volume 4. It's going to be Chapter 936 to 946. If you want to come, it's going to be at normal time, so 7 o'clock PST, whatever that is for you. And, dude, I can't believe I actually just did that. I made it through. I did what I needed to do. And I actually did it in only 3 hours. So, pretty proud of myself. Other than that, that's all I have. Thank you guys so much for coming. As always, appreciate you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Have a wonderful rest of your night, wherever you're at. And I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye. 7